Good morning, everyone. If I could ask councillors to take their seats. We're going to get started here. Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's special council meeting on the 2017 budget for City of Vancouver. Welcome to council chambers, to everybody here, and to all of you watching online. Thanks for tuning in. We're going to start with a roll call, please. Madam Clerk.
Mayor Robertson is in the chair. Councillor Louie. Councillor Stevenson. Here. Councillor Deal. Here. Councillor Jang is on a leave of absence for personal reasons. Councillor Reimer. Here. Councillor Meigs. Here. Councillor Ball is on a leave of absence for personal business. And Councillor Carr. Here. Councillor Affleck. Here. And Councillor DeGenova is not in the chamber. You have a quorum, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. And again, thanks everyone for being here. We are here to receive reports related to the 2017 capital and operating budget and to hear from speakers. We have 22 registered speakers for this special council meeting to give feedback and input in this final round of public input on the city budget for next year. And there are 6 reports and a memorandum in total from city staff to council for us to consider. We're going to start by hearing a staff presentation, which will be quite lengthy. My understanding is going through all the different facets of our city budget, both capital and operating this year. We will have a round of questions from council to staff on the presentation, and then we will hear from speakers. So it will be later this morning at best to hearing from our first speakers. We will take a noon break for council and everyone to have a bite to eat for lunch, and council will be meeting in camera at that point, and we will come back into special council to hear the rest of the speakers through the course of the afternoon. So with that, we'll get started with our staff presentation, which is leading off with Patrice Impey, who is our GM of finance, all things finance and budget related. Welcome, Ms. Impey.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. My pleasure to be here today to present to you the 2017 budget and 5-year financial plan. And I am joined here by our corporate management team, who will share in the presentation and also be here to answer questions, as well as a number of people from our finance team, Ben Russell, who's our Director of Financial Planning and Analysis, Colin Knight and Denise Lamb from our financial budget and reporting team, and a number of others who support the departments. So with that, I will get started. We have a fairly lengthy budget document, which I know you've all have a copy of. And what I'm going to do today is just walk through some of the highlight areas of the document, and certainly we can go into more detail if you have specific questions later. So this process began in October when we brought forward the budget outlook, and again, just to that purpose of the outlook is to set the stage for the budget discussions for the new year. We've gone through a fairly robust public consultation in the month of October. The report was published. We're now bringing forward the presentation. You'll hear from speakers, as Mr. Mayor has indicated, and next week, on Tuesday of next week, will be council approval. So that is the schedule. There are a number of key messages that come through in this year's budget, and I just wanted to highlight a few of those. Really, the focus being on enhancing a vibrant, livable, and sustainable city. We need to address both the challenges and the opportunities of growth. I think that's the theme that exists. We've had an incredible amount of growth. It's a terrific city to live in. With that comes some challenges, and in this budget, you'll see that we've addressed a number of those. Some of the highlights being addressing the housing needs and affordability, enhancing the city's vibrancy, affordability, and livability. We want to continue to make sure as we grow that we're managing our financial health appropriately, and we're enhancing the effectiveness of our organization internally to be able to grow with the city. Fostering Canada's leading economy and continuing to build a resilient, sustainable city. So you'll see each of these themes sort of come through as we talk through the budget. If I were to highlight a few very brief items, and there is sort of the 4-page budget highlight document that is in at the front of the budget. We have consistently had one of the lowest average property tax increases among the Lower Mainland communities. We've got some benchmarking data in the report, and I'll share a little bit of that with you. But we are experiencing the pressures of a growing city. We've got feedback through our public consultation around prioritization of housing, cost of living, infrastructure, and transportation, and I'll share more of that detail with you. So our revenue growth this year in the proposed budget is 4.6%. That is somewhat higher than prior years, and you'll see that it includes a 3.4% property tax increase. We'll talk a little bit more about the elements of that. Our utility rate increases across sewer, water, and solid waste are higher than inflation as well and higher than prior years. But we also have other revenue increases in development fees, engineering fees, parking, and some of our user fee areas. So those increased revenues are enabling both our regular cost increases, fixed cost increases, as well as new investments in key priority areas. And we'll go through some of the detail around that. The total is about $22 million of new investments in the operating budget. About one half of those are one-time, and one half would be ongoing in future operations. This next slide is a summary of those tax and fee increases in the budget. So property tax at 3.4. The average of all the utility increases is 6.1%. And again, those are different denominators. So the weighted average of that on a medium single-family home, combining the property tax and the utility fees, would be an increase of 4.4%. Under user fees, we've got a number of changes in our revenue there, and I'll share a little bit about that. But generally, the user fees have gone up 2%. In the case of recreation, 2.5%, where those also look at the competitive market and in setting those fees. So just as far as context before we get into the consultation feedback and the budget itself is just talk a little bit about the economy, what we are doing around our budget and best practices, and the financial health and how we use that to help determine our proposed budgets. Once again, Metro Vancouver is forecast to have the highest growth among major Canadian cities, and that's consistent over the last few years. And we're very fortunate to be in that position. Globally, though, we know that the economic outlook continues to be volatile, and that will and does affect Metro Vancouver over time. Prolonged low oil prices are suppressing Canada's economy. We know that China and Europe are continuing to undergo economic and structural reforms. We are benefiting from some improvements in the U.S. economy. You can see that Canada's GDP growth, while steady, is still quite low, in the 1 to 2% range. And meanwhile, inflation for Metro Vancouver is forecasted to be in the 2% range, and for 2016 at 2.1%. And I think, as you'll recall, each year inflation has been forecast at 2% and has consistently over the last few years come in under that number. 2016 is forecast to come in at 2.1%, which is what was forecasted a year ago today. Now, in our budget, just a reminder for Council that we had work done a number of years ago in redesigning our budget to align with best practices, and this budget continues to support those same best practices. And there are four main ones that we worked on. One was budget and aligning our budget to our strategy. So we've developed a lot of service plans, we've developed our service metrics, and we want to make sure that our budget is there to support those service plans of our various departments. Enhancing the public consultation, and I'll share the feedback from the consultation, but a lot of work done to really improve our consultation, both at the four-year level, which we do when we do our capital plan, and the annual check-in. This year is an annual check-in. Also providing relevant budget information, and that means information that's easy to understand for the public and that's communicated to them in a relevant and easy to access fashion. And streamlining our budget process. We have two reports, a budget outlook and a budget, which is a number fewer than we had in the past. Now, on our financial health, the Council also approved a number of financial sustainability principles a few years ago, and these guide both our financial planning and our both operating and capital budgets. And you've seen this before, so I won't go through it in a lot of detail, but the three main categories are fiscal prudence, really living within our means, managing our debt, making sure we're managing our revenue sources appropriately, affordability and cost effectiveness, so making sure that our services result in desired outcomes, that we have value for money in all of the work that we're doing, and we keep our property taxes and fees affordable. And asset management, which applies to our capital plan, obviously maintaining our assets in a good state of repair and using, optimizing our capital investments for new capital. One of our key metrics for financial health is managing our debt level. And this chart shows the percentage of our operating expenditures which go towards servicing our debt. And we have a limit that we'd set for ourselves between 6 and 10%. Prior to the Olympics, the city issued quite a bit more debt, and that had increased our projected debt servicing costs. And we've been managing that through our capital plans over the last few years to make sure that we're comfortably within that range. And this capital budget is consistent with the plans that we had put in place when we did our capital plan as far as our debt levels. So we're continuing along that stream. There's a number of benchmark items within the budget, and I'm just going to highlight a few of these. This is the average tax rate increase over the past 5 years, and you can see that Vancouver has had the third lowest among all the major metropolitan Vancouver cities over the last 5 years, at just around 2%, with the average being about 2.6%. And what that means as far as overall property tax for a single-family home, you can see Vancouver is the green line, and it sits below the average for Metro Vancouver, which is the orange line there. Similarly, when you combine property tax and utility fees for a median single-family home, Vancouver is sitting, in the mid-range for all Metro Vancouver municipalities, slightly below the average. We also look specifically at the utility fees, and this is utility fees across Metro Vancouver average and City of Vancouver for solid waste, water, and sewer. In total, we are just below the Metro Vancouver average on utility fees as well. So we're fairly well positioned on a tax and fee basis. We also do some benchmarking across the region on some of our recreation user fees, and you can see here on our 1 month pass and drop-in fees that we're well positioned at or below the average for other communities. Now, one thing I did want to point out is that when we talk about our property tax in this report, it's the city's portion of the property tax. However, as a resident or a business, when you receive your tax bill, it includes taxes for other taxing authorities. And that is a significant part of the total tax bill. And as you can see from this chart, the portion that the City of Vancouver is levying for other taxing authorities has grown at a much faster pace than our proportion of the population. That's because primarily those are on assessed value, and the total assessed value for the City of Vancouver over the region has grown at a faster pace. So we are picking up a higher portion of the other taxing authorities for residents and businesses in the city. Now, this table looks at the indicative what that would mean as far as a dollar value for property tax and utility fee impact. So you can see a median single-family home and a median business property. Property taxes at just over $2,000 would in 2017, and that would be an increase of $72 for a single-family home, and taxes for a business will be an increase of $133. Combining that with utilities, on a single-family home, the proposed budget would mean an increase of about $145 for a single-family home and $203 for a business property. And again, this doesn't include the other taxing authorities, which would be on top of this amount. Now, I've included this slide, which is not in the budget report, but as you know, BC Assessment has sent out a press release on the assessed value changes that they're seeing in the city across the province. And I just wanted to highlight how that impacts property taxes. So this is just a simple chart of, we can think of it as a municipality with 3 properties with a value of $3 million in year 1. That goes up 10% to $3.3 million in year 2. And the way that property tax calculations work in municipalities in BC and across Canada is that we look to achieve a total tax levy, and if the amount required to run this municipality is $6,000, then the tax rate would be $2 per thousand. As the assessed value of properties go up, if the tax levy continues to be $6,000, which is required to run this small municipality, the tax rate would be reduced to 1.8 per thousand. So even though assessed values go up, tax rates are adjusted, and therefore the total tax that this municipality receives would be unchanged. But what the different property owners will see may be different. So a property owner whose property went up by the same 10% would see their tax bill actually be flat. If the property owner whose value maybe stayed the same at $1 million, they'd actually see their taxes come down. And a property whose value went up by more than the average, maybe 20%, they would see their property tax go up. And so that's where we see different property owners seeing different impacts of property tax. And as it points out in the report, in past years, we've seen single-family homes grow at an assessed value higher than the average, and strata condos at less. And so in many cases, taxes in condo properties has come down, and single-family home properties have gone up more than the tax increase. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about our public consultation feedback, and it's an important part of the budget process, both being able to understand where the public sits, but also making sure that we're building that into both our budget, but also the service plans that each of our departments undertake. So how are we doing, Vancouver? We've had a number of different public consultation elements, and I'll just talk through a little bit of that and some of the results. A very robust consultation exercise that took place. We have an online survey process, which is consistent with previous years. We also undertook a formal survey, telephone survey, which is outreach as opposed to voluntary survey participants through the online survey. There was this fairly robust budget roadshow that went to a number of our community centers and libraries. And then through 311, people who called into 311 were asked 3 key questions, and we've also tracked the results of those and compared those to our online survey. And then there was a specific stakeholder workshop that took place in October with members of our advisory council, community organization, business improvement association. So these are people who are maybe a little bit more knowledgeable and more involved in some of the activities of the city, and we wanted to get their opinion as well on this year's budget. So what did we learn about important city issues? Both online, residents and businesses, and through our 311, you can see very consistent top 3 areas: housing, accommodation, cost of living, and infrastructure and transportation. And that was consistent across the groupings. What's quite interesting is when we look back over the previous years, we compare to last year. In fact, they are very similar. A little bit of the order has changed, but the same 3 items were top issues. Looking back to 2012, you can see that the picture is quite different. In fact, environmental issues, crime, city finances were in the top 5, and they're not in the top 5 last year or this year. So what it tells us is a couple of things. One is that a number of the activities that have taken place over the last 5 years have been to address some of those issues. And secondly, that the environment within the city is changing, and so we're seeing different issues come up and take priority. The next few slides are some of the survey results on a few of the satisfaction questions. So this question is whether the public's satisfaction level with city services, and you can see in the top right, about 69% of residents, 54% of businesses were satisfied with the city services. And on the bottom left, we show the trend over the last 3 years. So fairly consistent, slightly down on residents, and businesses, a slight improvement in satisfaction ratings. We ask service perceptions. Do you feel that services have been better or stayed the same, or whether they've gotten worse? 75% and 71% respectively for residents and businesses felt services were better or had stayed the same this year. You can see that's reasonably consistent with last year, slightly lower for residents and somewhat higher for businesses. We asked whether what the public's perception was of the value that you're getting for the tax dollar, and 43% residents felt good value, and 33% of businesses felt they had receiving good value. And you can see again on the bottom left, slightly down from 2 years ago and slightly up from last year for residents. And again, as with the previous one, the business replies are more positive this year than previous years. We also ask the tax tolerance question and the level of tax that you'd be willing to pay in order to maintain the current level of services. And again, you can see 2017 and 2016, very consistent. Vast majority of people will be willing to pay a 1% increase, and the majority are willing to pay a 2% increase. That comes down as you get farther out to 3 and 4%. We also asked a similar question of renters. Of course, they don't pay property tax directly, but in the long run, that gets reflected within their rents. And so the question was whether you'd be willing to pay additional rent in order to maintain service levels. And as you can see on the resident side, less than half, and that's a little bit lower than 2016, and on the business side, also less than 50%, but higher than residents. There is a question in the survey which asks the public what support you'd have for different measures if we needed to take different actions in order to balance the budget. And the highest rating response, and this is consistent with previous years, is to introduce new user fees for city services that currently don't have fees. The second one is to increase the fees for services that currently have existing fees. And then the third one would be to reduce the level of staffing personnel that provides that service. So this is fairly consistent that people like to see user fees. They're more comfortable with an increase in user fees than in broader fees like taxes. Then we asked a question around a number of different opportunities for improving efficiency for services that the city provides. And the top one was to have more opportunities to access services online. The second one is using green techniques, so more natural areas, perennial plants, etc. And the third was using more online engagement tools. Now, just a little bit of feedback from our in-person outreach. This was part of the budget roadshow, and as you can see, they used Lego pieces to help engage people in learning a little bit more about the city's budget and learning a little bit more about what they felt were the major issues facing the city. Very consistently, housing accommodation, cost of living came back as the priorities for this group who voted with their Lego pieces. But also, I think more importantly, it really engaged people, certainly engaged young people in understanding the city and understanding what's important to them. And this was the exercise. It had a number of little Lego examples of service areas and issues and that people voted on. Okay. Just a couple of pictures. You can see the fun that this sort of engaged people as we went out to the different community centers. And then we had our multi-stakeholder workshop. We asked the stakeholders 3 questions. One was from your perspective, again, being a group of people who are maybe a little bit more involved in some of the activities of the city. What are the major priorities for Vancouver as a growing city? How can we address those? Does the budget for 2017 reflect your greatest needs? And if not, what are the gaps? So a little bit of the feedback. Housing affordability emerged as a key priority, and a number of participants felt more action was needed. And certainly growing homelessness faced by people with disabilities or LGBTQ+ youth were also articulated as priorities. There was a commentary that the budget planning should be reviewed through the lens of some of our vulnerable communities. And then there was a lot of discussion around balancing the relationship between shorter and longer term challenges. So certainly, for example, some of our priorities have longer term timelines, but also there are some more urgent crises and activities that need to be addressed in the short term. And we also asked this group, what are your ideas for improving efficiency of service delivery and use of staff resources? There was some commentary around doing more planning and service offering at the regional level, being mindful of some of the domestic and the international narratives, with Vancouver being a very international city. Also, there was an interest in communicating better how taxes are apportioned to different areas, such as arts and culture and community. And then also talking about as staff turns over, how does that affect the efficiency of some of the committees that these folks sit on, and making sure we've got some good knowledge transfer processes. I think they recognize ongoing challenges with the pace and the backlog of city permits, and also finding ways to maybe recoup some of the costs of our events that take up some of our public safety expenses, and how we could recoup those. And lastly, we asked what technologies could help improve the city services, and what ways could the city generate new revenues. So there was a lot of discussion around other fees, maybe in areas such as the film industry and the cost of film permits, about integrating some of our digital apps to make that more efficient, increasing revenues from our development areas, and also being a city that is looking to attract digital talent, making sure that our own digital presence is sophisticated. So that's the feedback that we heard from the public, and I'll now move to the operating budget and talk to you a little bit about how some of that feedback is incorporated in the investments that we're making. So the budget document itself has quite a lengthy section which is around the priority areas, and it talks about some of the accomplishments and activities in those areas, and you can see those listed on the slide. There's a lot more detail within the budget itself on some of the results. But these are the key areas, and you can see that they do align with what we've heard from the public. So our operating revenues for 2017 is just over 1.3 million. The split, primarily property tax at 57% and utility fees at 19%, is quite consistent with previous years. Those are very stable revenue sources for the city. About 25% of our budget is in the area of user fees, development fees, parking, where people have a choice as to what they want to consume. And so those are more variable. We try to be more conservative in budgeting those revenues for that reason. And this is the breakdown of our expenditures by service area. Public safety, just about a third of our total expenditures to go to police and fire. Engineering and utilities, another 28%. So that's the second largest grouping. And then our community-related services at 22%. We've got our corporate activities, such as our corporate support, contingencies, and support for our debt and capital programs at 19%. This next slide really breaks down those expenditures into those that are funded specifically by fees and taxes. So as you know, utilities, utility expenditures are funded by utility fees. Utility fees can only fund utility expenditures, so they're a balanced revenue and expenditure line. So this is a grouping excluding utilities, fees and taxes, about 1.025 million. And when we exclude utilities, you can see that public safety at 40% is the largest grouping that's funded by property tax and fees. And again, primarily by property tax. There's not a lot of fee generation in our public safety area. So that's important because when we look at our fixed costs, we know that fixed costs in public safety are growing significantly with the higher wage increases, and that puts a lot of pressure on our property tax. So revenue increases are 57.6 million, and our expenses as well, and that breaks down into three groups. Utility expenditures of 10 million, fixed costs on our non-utility area of 25 million, and new investments, as I mentioned before, of 22.3 million. I'll just walk through that a little bit and give you some flavor for some of those new investments. So the way we've approached the property tax this year is with the real pressures on our expenditures. We've broken it down into two parts. 2%, which is aligned with our inflation forecasts, is really to support our ongoing services, and 1.4% as new investments in areas where we do want to invest above and beyond our current service level. So within our 2% tax funding, our ongoing operations, that covers our regular fixed costs like debt charges, external party costs. There's a portion that's sewer that's tax funded, our occupancy costs, wages and benefits, etc. And just to point out there on wages and benefits, specifically even for our police who had an arbitrated wage increase. That increase for 2016 at 3.5% with all benefits amounted to almost 1% on its own as an increase to our taxes. So it's quite significant, and the biggest part of our ongoing pressures on our ongoing costs. Now, some of the growth in our costs is revenue related. So in areas like civic theaters where our revenue is going up, there's associated costs, or in parks where there's more activity. So those are all good things, and that's part of good growth in our budget. Some of our budget, though, is provincial downloading. So those are just additional costs to the city. And then also included in what we've grouped as our 2% tax is investments in our ongoing operations around financial health and the effectiveness of operation. There are a number of areas there that we're looking to invest, particularly around compliance, so payment card industry and regulatory compliance, improvements in our IT and digital service 311 areas. We've had a new permitting system, as you know, and that's is operational now, and those are costs for running that new system and the team within our development and building licensing group that manages that. Funds for zero emission building planning and implementation, a regulatory review that'll be done by our planning, urban design and sustainability team, investment in our driver services training, continuing to focus on performance measurement and analytics to give us more data and more information to help us manage our services better, and starting to look at seismic risk in private property. So those are the areas that we've invested, as well as our fixed costs that have funded our ongoing operations at an impact paid for by property tax of about 2%. Now, as I mentioned, of those ongoing costs, wages are about 60% of our total budget, and you can see in this chart that the compounded annual wage increase has increases significantly above inflation. Inflation is the lowest line in gray. The yellow line is our QP collective agreements, and the green line, police, and fire is the blue line. Now, police has settled or had an arbitrated agreement, so we have wages now for 2016, 17, 18. And you can see that with that in mind, police increases since 2002 have totaled almost 68% a wage increase, whereas inflation has been just 38.5%. So all of that additional pressure on wages, and again, somewhat outside of council's control on public safety, those are pressures on our operating costs, and those are funded directly through property taxes. And as I mentioned, the increase for 2016 at 3.5% for VPD only impacted the city's budget by about 1%, a tax increase at $6.1 million. So what also has happened sort of to counterbalance the wage increases that have been above inflation, you can see that staffing has dropped from the peak at 2009 and has remained fairly steady across the last 7 years. We've seen it start to increase just slightly at the end of 2016, and with these new investments, we'll see some additions in staffing. But really, as far as overall staff supporting the city's activities, it's fairly flat, and that offsets some of the wage increases that have gone through. So this is a summary of the investments for 2017. As I mentioned, $22.3 million, and again, we've broken it out into two parts, which is our ongoing, which I just talked about, our financial health and operational effective investments, and then at 1.4% for key areas to address again the challenges and opportunities of a growing city. Under the topic equity, safety, and livability, that's about $8.7 million. There are a number of investments there, and I'll talk a little bit about some of the key ones, but it's public realm cleanliness, funding for a whole new fleet of fire trucks, additional security in some of our buildings, the operating costs of a new branch library, and additional park rangers, again, to support our parks operation, and an increase in collections at our library. Under housing needs and affordability, we've got $6.4 million in the budget and investments, and that covers more investments in interim housing. As you know, council approved implementation costs for the empty homes tax. And we've got two initiatives in the downtown east side around some of our social initiatives, as well as public space improvement. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. So those are funded in a number of ways, but the impact on property tax of those two is 1.2%. And our public realm cleanliness and investment is funded through the utility. There's also about 1.8 million that is going towards arts and culture. Again, we're looking at addressing some of the challenges, but also making sure that the city continues to be a vibrant city to live in. So those investments include investment in VAHA Vancouver, our film office, Canada 150, celebrations, the Inspiration Lab at Vancouver Public Library, an increase for our cultural grants, a new film office at VEC, and community use of civic theater spaces. So this is just a summary of the two first areas, which is equity, safety, and livability, and housing needs and affordability. And you can see here the list of areas that I spoke to and some of the areas that we're focusing on. So under public realm cleanliness, large item collection pilot program, quicker response times to overflowing receptacles, illegal dumping and abandoned garbage. We're looking at additional security at public buildings, additional park rangers to improve staff and public safety at parks, libraries, other city buildings, park rangers to help reduce criminal activity, encampments, drug alcohol use, and a reduction in 311 calls for ranger services. So let me go into a little bit around our investments on downtown east side and in-term housing. Within the downtown east side, some of those social initiatives include our street market operations, the Lux operation, a women's market, violence risk assessment and low barrier employment, a Carnegie Gathering Place and Evelyn Saller Center, a system of care coordination for the downtown east side, and a resource to look at some long-term planning for some long-term solutions to the challenges that we're facing in the downtown east side. On public space improvement, that includes continuing our efforts with Vancouver Coastal Health and St. Paul's with regard to mental health and addiction. A multi-departmental operations plan that has taken place over the last couple of years in the summer to mitigate street disorder in the downtown inside, prevent large-scale events, and providing housing to those in need. We're looking to extend that to be a permanent activity that happens year-round, as well as funding for additional outreach, street cleaning, and policing and security. Under interim housing, we've got investments in extension of the quality and lease, and also to subsidize locations for tenants in the Jubilee House and other social housing buildings. We are looking at new opportunities to secure interim housing and also funding for the Vermont operating costs and leases that support interim housing. So those are the main areas of focus in the downtown east side and interim housing. Under public realm cleanliness, this is the second year of a two-year investment around street cleaning and increased enforcement. You can see here a number of areas of focus with street cleaning, including a pilot program for large item collection, quicker response times, 300 new litter receptacles added to hotspot and high demand areas, a higher focus on litter and needle collection, particularly around schools and residential areas, new recycling waste diversion programs, and increased enforcement through ticketing. And illegal dumping is an offense under the street and traffic bylaw, and you can see there the consequences of that and some of the work that the engineering organization has done to address both enforcing illegal dumping and ensuring cleaner streets. But just a couple of examples here on street cleaning. You sort of see before the level of garbage in just in the street area and in the lanes, and after the work of our engineering crew and those additional investments that were put in last year, that we've got a much cleaner and safer area. Similarly, on enforcement, some illegal dumping, and you can see the results of the enforcement activities there. And the last investment I wanted to speak to was our investment in permit processing, and that's, again, a multi-year investment. Last year, we invested significantly in staffing and in a new system. And this year, we're making some of those system investments permanent, and as well as an investment in a regulatory review. So 2016 is forecast to show nearly record volumes of permit applications, about 8,600, which is matched only by the higher record volumes in 2014. So the investments over these past years have had a very positive impact in our permit wait times. New 1 and 2 family permit applications are being reviewed and returned to clients in 8 to 10 weeks compared to 16 weeks in November of 2015. As well, field review permit times have been cut in half from 12 to 6 weeks through the work that's been done in improving efficiencies and workflow and capacity with the industry. And over 60% of our large-scale construction projects are close to meeting their full intake to issuance targets of 26 weeks. So a lot of good work and results based on the work that's done over the last year. Coming into 2017, there are a number of new opportunities. Again, building on the prior year system investments, there's a number of process changes that will be taking place to improve the processing time. That includes things like exploring tree retention and removal options in advance of permit applications so that those issues can be addressed in advance and avoid delays with redesign if that takes place later in the application process. And as I mentioned, there's plans to undertake a regulatory review, and that's expected to, with the benefit of improving wait times, and continuing to collaborate with the industry on process improvements and opportunities to build capacity both through training and through workshops with the industry. So I'll just touch briefly on our utilities, and you can see here the proposed rate increases for water at 4%, and that would be an increase of about $24 for a single-family home. Sewer, our increase is 11.3% or $39. Solid waste, 3.8% or $10. In the NEU, is proposed an increase of 3.2% or $28, and that's for an average suite because obviously that varies by usage. Just to speak a little bit about the water pricing strategy, so the proposed increase of 4%, and you can see our forecast over the next 4 years as well. The real drivers impacting that rate are Metro Vancouver water rates that are increasing above inflation at 3.2%. We've also increased the reserve to make sure that we're staying at a healthy reserve level within our targets for a reserve. And there is an increase in funding for capital projects. We've experienced a higher level of service breaks, and so there'll be additional capital to address that. Sewer, of course, experiencing the biggest increase, and this is consistent with prior years, and it's consistent with what we're going to see in future years, and that message hasn't changed. 5.1% increase in the Metro levy is really driven by site preparation for secondary treatment at Iona. We're also increasing the debt associated with sewer to fund capital for our ongoing replacement and separation program. And we're contributing to a reserve as well to ensure that we're maintaining a good reserve as we go into these next few years where we'll see a significant increase in costs, primarily driven through the secondary treatment at Iona. Under solid waste, we proposed a 3.8% increase in 2017, and that is projected to be somewhat lower over the next few years. The major drivers are leaf removal, which will now be funded through the utility, an investment in bulky item pickup program, and in the public realm cleanliness, which we spoke about. And this is offset somewhat by a decrease because we've transitioned recycling over to MMBC. And lastly, the NEU, again, the main drivers in the rate, well, this is really consistent with the rate increase and forecasts that we've had over previous years. And it is also informed by the advisory committee, which has recommended a 2% inflationary increase and 1.2% escalation factor. And I'll just touch on the capital budget. I'll give you a little bit of background, and then I'll have some of my colleagues from the corporate management team speak to some of the specific investments. This first chart, which is in the budget document, shows the capital expenditure budget and actual over the last several years. And what you can see is over the last few years, our expenditures have been somewhat less than originally budgeted. And in 2016, we increased the budget fairly significantly to ensure that we were able to catch up on some of those activities. We'll see that increase again in 2017, which will be one of our higher budgets for capital since prior to the Olympics. Now the capital budget is made up of two parts. One is just ongoing expenses for projects that Council has already approved. We are also bringing forward about $292 million of new projects, but $186 million of that will actually be spent in 2017. And you can see the breakdown of the funding sources for that. So primarily what's coming forward and driving the increase in our capital budget is the opportunity for more work to be done that's funded by developer contributions. So we're fairly conservative with that as we build our capital plan. As more developer contributions come in, then we're able to take on more activity. We do have a target of about 2/3, 1/3 of investment in new versus renewed, and you'd see we're fairly close to that in the 2017 budget as well. And then we also look at balancing our funding sources between our capital reserves, our debt financing, and pay-as-you-go. And again, that's we're pretty consistent with what we have with the capital plan. The budget expenditures for 2017 will be $485 million. Again, one of our higher budgets over the last few years, and the largest areas are utilities and public works and transportation, the third being housing. So I'm going to invite our Chief Housing Officer, Mukhtar Latif, to come and speak to some of the housing investment in 2017. And again, this will be the biggest investment that the city has made in housing. It's about $80 million in total.
Mukhtar Latif, Chief Housing Officer and the CEO of the Vancouver Affordable Housing Agency. Vancouver Affordable Housing Agency has been making good progress over the past year in bringing forward the sites that were designated to the agency. We have over 600 homes already going through the planning and design phase, with 250 units already approved for development permits, and we'll be looking to start on site on those particular units next year. And we have the other sites that are going through the rezoning process next year as well. So those will be also starting on site latter part of 2017 and 2018. So bringing forward new homes that will meet the needs of the communities within Vancouver in terms of delivery. We are looking to take forward the projects to meet the mandate of the 2,500 units that were approved by council, and we're looking for the capital funding to support the planning and design work of the next phase of sites. And what we're seeing is that by taking projects down to the detailed planning and design, we have been able to secure funding from other levels of government. Having shovel-ready projects has already secured $16 million from BC Housing for two projects down, one on Fraser Street and the other one down on the River District. And these are new homes that will be targeted for families and seniors and bringing rents down because of the additional capital contribution that BC Housing are making. What we also are looking at is innovative delivery mechanisms, as well as creating new partnerships. Our movable modular project, the pilot will be completing in Q1 in 2017, and we're looking to expand that onto other sites subject to council approval. And we'll be also looking at new partnerships, such as the creative partnership with UNIA to create a youth hub and Aboriginal housing as well. So meeting the needs of a variety of communities across the city, including the partnership that we have announced recently with the Chinatown Foundation for 58 Hastings, where we're looking to increase the amount of affordability that was planned under the Downtown East Side from the third to up to 100% if we're able to secure senior levels of government. We already secured 50% as part of that process, and working hard to achieve the balance. So if I can then pass on to my colleague.
I'll just invite up Kathleen Llewellyn-Thomas, who is our General Manager of Community Services.
Good morning. Community Services Housing Policy and Projects Group is responsible for the overall housing strategy for the City of Vancouver, as led by Council, of course. We're responsible for facilitating the delivery of affordable housing, buying land, providing capital grants to improve and create new social housing. And of course, we're always monitoring our program and researching data trends, as is indicated in our major update of the strategy right now. As Council heard in our report card this spring, we've already exceeded our 2012 to 2021 target of 10,250 housing units by 300 units, so we're at 130%. Some of the commitments that Council has already made in the past, over 2015 and 2016, we're actually going to see delivered as housing this year. Community amenity contributions through inclusionary zoning policies will yield 285 new units. We have distributed capital grants for non-city owned social housing, and we have $4.4 million, and we expect to see 125 to 250 rooms or units come on. We have 135 new social housing units that are as a result of DCL and cash CAC investments. That's 19 million. And 81 new social housing units at 1107 Seymour. And those are all things that have will be coming forward this year, but Council's already seen them and approved them in past years. Our anticipated commitments for 2017 include grants of $3 million to upgrade SROs, new grants of for social housing of $2.5 million, and an estimated 200 units created through inclusionary zoning policies. As I already mentioned, will be coming on board this year. Community Services Social Policy Group is responsible for shepherding Council's objectives around childcare. And to date, we have a plan for childcare, which is 2015 to 2018, a target of 1,000 spaces. And in year 2016, we've already reached 75% of that goal. Some of the projects that Council committed to last year will be coming on board this year, and that includes the Lord Nelson Elementary Childcare at $3.3 million and Sir Sanford Fleming at $3.1 million. So that's why we'll be spending $6.4 million in 2017. We also have money for feasibility planning and schematic design for other childcares of $2.8 million, childcare facility at Maple and 10th of $2.5, and we also are watching for emerging priorities in partnership with school board especially, and we're holding $2.9 million for that. In terms of public art, this is the public art money which is in the capital program and is not all of the granting and other things that Council does. That's in the operating budget, and that's in our operating budget we carry $11 million or $12 million for granting. But for public art, which is capital money, we're carrying $1.2 million, and that's to allow for new public art partnerships, especially in this year, including the Canada 150 Plus murals. We're going to be, as usual, partnering for large-scale commissions, new artist-initiated projects, and of course the all-important maintenance of the existing public art installations that we have in the city. Last year, Council approved a public art boost of $1.5 million, and it's a multi-year program as well. It's coming out of innovation funds, and last year's Mural Fest was a good example where they matched dollar for dollar Council's contribution through innovation funding. It's a phased program. We've committed about $500,000 of the whole program, and on a going forward basis, we are in discussions with creative people who are making applications right now for the rest of the money. And then we also have private sector art through our program through the development process. We have 12 recently completed projects and 34 that are in process as of November this year. I'll now call on my next colleague for their presentation.
Just under community facilities, we've got a couple of investment areas under culture facilities and social facilities that you can see here. One is the grant distribution from the RISE development and our grant program disbursements, as well as under social facilities, Marpole Place, our capital grants and investments at in the kitchen reservations at Carnegie and Gathering Place Community Centers. Yeah, my mistake. Our next area is Parks and Open Space, and this is a Board of Parks and Recreation. Malcolm Bromley, our General Manager, can't be here today, but I would invite Tina Mack from the Parks Board to present this area.
Thank you and good morning. The Park Board is pleased to be receiving almost $22 million expenditure budget for 2017 in the capital program, complemented by budget that we coordinate with REFM, Real Estate and Facilities Management, for our recreational buildings, new buildings and upgrades. I'm here to speak to some upgrades today on behalf of our General Manager, Malcolm Bromley. The first feature we have is urban forest and natural features. This program focuses primarily on our Greenest City targets to plant 150,000 trees by 2020, and we're making great headway and ramping up our program with the target of to plant 15,000 trees in 2017, including 6,000 trees in our parks, 1,000 on the streets, and 8,000 on private property through our growing tree sales program. It's become a very popular event. The next major area of expenditure for us in the capital program is in our activity features. This includes playgrounds, renewals of activity features like water parks and skate parks, as well as an outdoor pool. The playground work is one of the bigger pieces of the portfolio, and the emphasis is on upgrading older playgrounds. We did a citywide assessment in 2015 of the condition of our playgrounds, and it's essential that we bring them up to current safety standards as well as aspire for nature play opportunities. We engage with community, and projects for next year include Douglas Park, China Creek, North Park, Ash Park, Charleston, and Champlain Park playgrounds. Also in this group, you'll see Dr. Sanyet Sen Gardens. The pond is scheduled for renewal, and we're the recipient of a Parks Canada grant, which will help make that project possible. The pond that spans both the public garden and the private gardens there was built in 1986 for Expo and hasn't seen a renewal since that time, so we're looking forward to starting that project in January. You also see here a highlight of completing the planning and design for a new outdoor pool, which is a priority for the current park board. The location for that will be determined through the outcomes of our Van Splash strategy. We've had a great engagement over the last year. More than 4,000 people have participated in our Van Splash engagement. The results of that are expected to come to the board for approval in the summer of 2017, after which we can embark upon planning and design, so funding is available to get that going. The beloved Stanley Park seawall is always a priority for us, construction of which started in 1917 and didn't complete until 1971. So we're in an era of continual renewal to ensure longevity for at least the next 20 years. We do feel the impacts of climate change and storm on the seawall, and we do consider sea level rise. So the funding here you see is to start a contract for substantial repairs to our seawall, including rebuilding 2 sections, expecting work to start next summer, and Council can anticipate receiving a request from Park Board, including myself, for a contract award when we're ready to do that. Oops, my apologies. Other way, this way. And a few more highlights. New parks and renewals includes funding for land acquisition, seed money, $1.6 million. I think you can appreciate that's for maybe a single-family lot in East Vancouver. That's based on a willing seller basis with available land, and we'll talk about that when opportunities arise next year. One of our favorite projects underway right now is planning for our new park in downtown South at Smythe Richards Streets. I understand that 18,000 people work within a 5-minute walk of this small 0.8-acre parcel. So creating new green space downtown for a livable, walkable city is essential. We have some money here to get the construction going next year once we've made our way through some building and development permits for a new park amenity building and a bridge structure proposed for the park. We're also looking forward to renewing older parks, especially in East Vancouver. Sunset Park would be the priority for next year, and we've recently learned that we're the recipient of a federal grant of $500,000 that will help us increase the scope of renewal at Sunset Park, located near the Sunset Community Center. We work collaboratively, as I mentioned, with the Real Estate and Facilities Management team. We're looking at park buildings and field houses. We have some funding for renewal and renovations, but certainly our need far exceeds the funds available. So we look at priorities, our top priorities being those washrooms in Stanley Park, which are a key focus, and we have several others on the list in the design stage that would benefit from additional funds to move forward, but we'll focus on our priorities for next year. And park infrastructure, we do have a large park system, 230 parks with trails and pathways and parking lots and drainage systems needing renewal. And our Lost Lagoon Fountain, the Jubilee Fountain from 1932, is in need of renewal. Unfortunately, we had an issue last year and the fountain is at present not operational, so we're working on designs to have that up and running for next year. And the last grouping here is our recreation facilities. Really looking forward to the Killarney Senior Center construction in Killarney Park. We have a good program that we work with REFM as well on capital maintenance for recreation facilities. That would include roofs and mechanical systems. Energy optimization for building energy retrofits can save us our hydro bills down the road. And also of keen interest to the Park Board is site feasibility, consultation, and design for the Marpole Oak Ridge Community Center renewal. So there's money there to have the consultancy starting, which will build upon some work that the Park Board completed in 2010 for the Marpole Community Center. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. The next 2 areas are under the purview of our Chief Engineer, so I'll ask Jerry Dobrovoni to come up and present those.
Thank you very much, Patrice. Transportation is the first section. The walking and cycling are two of our priority areas. We've got several major projects that are underway. The Burrard Bridge, the first one, is the continuation of the work that has been ongoing through 2016. The end of January next year, you'll see the west side of the bridge complete, and then the crews will move over to the east side of the bridge and be there for the first half of the year, completing the railings and sidewalks. Walking and cycling network upgrades, that includes safety recommendations that will be coming to council next week, and you'll see that program and funding for that is included in that category. Seaside Greenway was approved by council earlier this year, and that's to improve the walking and cycling environment on the south side of False Creek, between the Canby Bridge and Granville Island. There's a number of conflicts there. We're a victim of our own success. There's very, very high volumes of people walking and cycling, and it's to get separation between the pedestrians and the cyclists. Transit replacements, TransLink and Coast Mountain Bus will be making a number of changes and replacing some of their old trolley poles. And we have city infrastructure that's attached to those poles. And so when they go in to do their work, then we do our corresponding work so we can transfer our equipment onto the new infrastructure. Major roads, the Georgia and Dunsmuir Viaduct removal project, that's the design work that's ongoing now for the design of the new road system that would be in place. And that design work will carry on through next year to get us to a point where we'd be prepared to move forward with construction at a later date, but that's all for the design. Major roads rehabilitation, included in that category is major changes to the Knight Street and Marine Drive intersection. That intersection is the highest collision location in the city of Vancouver and one of the highest collision locations in the Lower Mainland. And so it's undertaking safety improvements there. We understand that the locations in the region that are ranked higher than Marine and Knight are also being improved. So by being timely with that, we'll avoid being the highest collision location in the region. H-frame removals in the next category is also an example where we have infrastructure attached to the timber H-frame electrical utility poles that are in the laneways in the downtown. So as BC Hydro removes those H-frames and undergrounds their infrastructure, then we also remove our corresponding infrastructure that's attached to it. Utilities and public works includes a variety of areas. Waterworks, the regular distribution and transmission main replacement programs. One of the major projects there is on Knight Street. We have large water mains there. We're coordinating our work, so there's some changes being made at the surface with the S-curve on Knight Street. So we're taking the opportunity to replace the water mains and also the aging sewer mains that are on that section of Knight. It's also continuing to accelerate our sewer separation program, which is a long-term. Many of these programs are very long-term programs, 100-year programs, and so it's a continued investment in those long-term programs. The landfill closure, there's a long-term closure plan for the different segments and sections of the landfill. There's a major portion of work over the next number of years that would start next year. The next two items under solid waste, I'll just point out the landfill entrance. It's to make changes to add an additional scale so we don't have the large queuing that we see there, but also an opportunity to make much larger the drop-off areas where we can have larger recycling and partners with other stewardship committees for electronics and those sorts of things, so we can get many more items out of the landfill stream. Same thing with the transfer station here in town down on Kent Avenue. It's an opportunity to make the drop-off area much larger so we can have a much larger variety of bins there for various products. Neighborhood energy, I'll just mention, is expanding very quickly. The number of new buildings being added, and these are the corresponding increases in the system to connect to new customers, including Emily Carr and other institutions. Finally, vehicles and equipment, our annual replacement programs for vehicles. A number of the vehicles included in this program are related to the additional street cleanliness items in terms of additional flusher trucks, sweepers, and litter jitneys for the additional crews that are doing litter pickup. And the final deliveries of the fire truck replacement. That was a large portion of the 2016 vehicle replacement, and the final trucks will be coming in next year.
Thanks so much. Just a final couple of areas, things like information technology that really helps support our operations in delivering services to the public. The capital budget has just over $20 million for information technology, a large portion of that going to our core IT infrastructure and replacing our end-of-life hardware, as well as some application investments in our fleet management software and just the final phases of our permanent license transformation program. As well, a big portion of the budget goes to our civic facilities, again, helping our staff to deliver services under fire. Fire Hall number 5, which includes, of course, social housing, is budgeted for $11.5 million in 2017, and the planning and design for Fire Hall number 17. There is a budget for office renovations and moves for our police department, capital maintenance for animal control, work on our administrative facilities, including seismic upgrades at the West Annex and, of course, the deconstruction of the East Annex. There's also just under $2 million budgeted for our service yards to replace some fuel tanks and general capital maintenance. There are also a big investment area this year is library and archives, almost $16 million towards the expansion. Levels 8 and 9 at our central library, our new Nesmat's Strathcona branch library, which is completing, and capital maintenance across the library and archives network. Our budget also has $6.7 million for overhead, and that covers our financing fees and some of the support organizations to deliver the capital budget itself. So I'll just finish off with a little bit of our 5-year plan. And again, our goal being not just looking with a 1-year window through our service plans and our strategies, our multi-year, and to have a finance plan that starts to reflect that. Within our budget, you'll see that we do show a 5-year trend for our operating revenues and expenses. This reflects really our known expenses and our known revenue sources now without any significant changes to our service areas. And you can see that that continues a fairly small and steady growth over the next few years, and the corresponding expenditures and the breakdown of those. And lastly, we have a 5-year chart for our capital plan. And you can see 2017, again, a big budget year. 2018 and 2019 through 21 will be part of our next capital plan, which in this one ending in 2018. And so that really reflects sort of a historical trend of spend. Of course, Council will have the opportunity to establish the capital plan for 2019, and we'll bring that to Council in 2018. So just in conclusion, I want to thank you for considering the proposed budget today. It really is a culmination of an exceptional amount of work by departments right across the city. It really is a balancing effort looking at both our financial constraints, making sure that we can have a sustainable organization going forward, and addressing the major issues that we hear from the public moving forward with our plans and priorities and City Council's goals, addressing as well the regulatory compliance requirements of a large organization. So we'd be very happy to take any questions from Council.
Okay, thank you very much for the extensive presentation, and again to the whole staff team for all the work putting this together. This is one of the big huge efforts over the year's work to put together the ensuing year's budgets, and I know a great deal of work goes into it, and every year even more effort goes into the engagement piece. So appreciate all the efforts on the public consultation side of things, and ensuring we get as much feedback and as many voices involved around the city in shaping our budget. So we've got a good list of councillors on the queue. I was going to lead off with a couple of questions before we go to the queue, and then once we hear from questions from council, we'll go to our speakers list. So my questions start first and foremost with additional costs related to downloading. Just a concern to see that flag there, and also noted that in your slide related to downloading from provincial government, there wasn't anything specific on the DNA lab costs that are now piled onto the VPD budget, the police department budget. And just wondering on the analysis of that download, we're also seeing a lot of costs racking up due to the fentanyl overdose crisis as well. A lot of staff time that's gone into that. And if you could just expand a little on the work that staff did to identify new costs that we're carrying to keep things safe and healthy in the city in light of the downloading that we see.
Mm-hmm. So what was specifically identified in the budget was really the downloading around housing, subsidies that had been provided to the city in past years that have ended. And so to maintain the residents in those buildings, the city is increasing, filling in the gap of our senior levels of government. As far as the other activities that are taking place, I think we, in the memo to council, we outlined a number of areas where there's a lot of pressure on primarily our first responders and also on our frontline staff around the fentanyl and opiate crisis. Is the amount of activity as well as the stress level that they're encountering. And so we have looked at a number of areas of pressure, and that was identified in the memo as well on different areas that I think are opportunities for the city to be able to address the crisis going forward, even though we maybe don't know exactly what may transpire over the next year. But there are a number of areas where we see the pressure and the opportunity for the city to really take on probably a role outside of our normal role, but to be sure that we're addressing that crisis. Mm-hmm.
And particularly on the housing piece, and just noting that we're seeing unprecedented investments in this city budget into affordable housing. Obviously, there's a download connected there because the provincial and federal government collectively are not; those governments are not adequately funding our housing needs. Obviously, with homelessness continuing to be a significant challenge for us, and the housing investment there, obviously some is capital, primarily is capital, and through VAHA. Can you just speak a little more about how that's split up and how we continue to press on the operating side in terms of social housing, supportive housing, that is very clearly in the mandate of the province, and focus on the capital side?
Yeah, so let me start, and then I'll invite Mr. Latif and Ms. Llewellyn-Thomas to also comment. So in the capital budget, there is $80 million of the city capital that is targeted towards housing. That is the most that the city has ever used of city funds, and that would include DCL dollars as well in that target. So that's our capital, and VAHA is delivering a number of the housing units and funding that through the DCL and other city funds. On the operating side, the city's definitely stepped in under interim housing. That's not been an expense that the city's mandated to take on, and we've got about $2.5 million of incremental investment in interim housing. I'd like to add to the comments? Yeah.
We just recognise that there's been obviously underinvestment in affordable housing over many years, and the relationship that we had with the province and the federal government is where we've been contributing land as part of that overall package of subsidy that can be created to deliver affordability within the city. We did offer the 20 sites to the federal and provincial governments, and we are seeing some of the money now starting to come through as part of the BC housing funding that we got on 2 of the sites, and we're hopeful next year with the budget that the federal government puts forward that there will be more opportunities to access funding to deliver housing on those particular sites as well.
Okay, and there, if we were to see some significant new commitments from the federal and provincial government, we've obviously seen the province signal more money being allocated in their run-up to election, which is good, particularly given the surpluses that they've racked up. The federal government is obviously expected to signal more housing dollars. What's our capacity to go beyond what we have if there are significant investments? and we have the opportunity to accelerate on housing. How else can we pick up the pace, or does this budget give us latitude to be able to support some new projects if the money comes from those levels?
Yeah, the funding that that council has committed to date has allowed us to do the planning design work on the sites that we have been working on over the last year or so, and that has enabled those projects to be supported by the provincial government. As we move forward, we are looking to develop those projects so that they are all at a shovel-worthy stage, so that federal government does step up and support those projects going forwards. In terms of what more we can do is obviously we are working up relationships with faith-based organizations, with other non-profits who can bring forward their land as well, so that we are able to support those organizations and also access provincial and federal government funding too.
Okay, thanks for that. My last question is back to the overdose crisis on our streets and the support. Obviously, the incredible workload and stress on our first responders, our firefighters in particular, and people working in shelters, doing outreach, the street support that our community services staff are also doing. I know there's additional resources in this budget that are proposed, but certainly there are concerns that it's not enough given the pressure that we're facing. And given that we're not seeing as significant enough support from the provincial government, in particular the federal government, to move faster on this and make sure we're saving lives. Can you just speak to our capacity to do more? Would we go into contingency dollars if we need to do more urgently? What's our best course? I know Councillor Meggs, as our finance chair, had asked for that memo related to it, but if you could speak to it from a budget perspective, that'd be helpful.
Yes, certainly. We have spoken sort of with all of our colleagues and our fire chief, community services, and the rest of our corporate management team on the crisis, on the impact of what we're doing today, and what that might mean in the future. And I think the sense across the group is that there is a lot that can be done. We've outlined a number of different areas, both as far as staffing and supporting the community. I think from a budget point of view, our sense is that one of the best ways to approach it is to look at our council contingency, which is set up as something that kind of addresses the unknown, or we don't maybe know exactly how many dollars to put to something today or exactly what needs to happen, but it provides some capacity within the budget for us to address those coming forward. Our recommendation would be that we be able to react quickly to what transpires over the next year, and to bring forward to council some opportunities to address that as the need arises, and being able to focus those in the right areas. And we can use the council contingency for that. If we wanted to increase the council contingency, that would be an additional tax increase. And then again, use that as an opportunity to address things as they come along.
Okay, thank you. That's my time. I'll go to Councillor Meggs, Chair of Finance.
Well, thanks, Mr. Mayor. This is a daunting job. It's a big document, but it seems like we are, as the mayor has indicated, really in some unprecedented times. But I just want to go back to some of your original points about the economic context, because we hear a lot of debate about the basic benchmarks for the budget. We should be, taking a look at inflation, or we should be taking a look at growth, or, or wages is the third area that we hear a lot about. When you're taking those economic suggestions or forecasts, we had GDP projected to grow between 2.8 and 3.1 annually. Inflation projected to be 2.1 to 2, so those are 2.4 depending who we talk to. How do you weight those when you then begin to start into your process?
Mm-hmm. So there's not a magic formula for budgeting according to the external metrics, but we do look at an inflation as far as an affordability measure. So what we hear from the public is, if their wages are going up according to inflation and costs, and they're feeling like they're fairly balanced. And so that's sort of our starting point around when we look at property taxes. But certainly when economic growth is at 2 and as at 3+%, that's a measure of sort of the activity in the city, and that then is also a measure of the activity that falls back to the city to support. So I think balancing between those factors is something that we look at, and part of proposing a higher tax increase this
really
year
should think
to reflect that additional growth.
We should think about both. And we've got to
Yes.
try to weight them up appropriately. But I guess the other point that you raised here in how the community responded to the consultation was that housing affordability was the critical concern. I mean, housing is always a concern, and that's clearly the city's responsibility to play part of that role in terms of land use and so on. But would you say we're seeing record activity in the housing market even though the affordability crisis continues, or is it at a low level? I mean, in 2008 it stopped completely. How busy are we?
Well, I can have Kay Krishna speak to what she's seeing in volume, but what we know from our forecast for 2016 is that we'll have the highest level of building permits since the record of which was in 2014, will be the second highest.
So that's
year. So there's still
well
a lot
above
of activity.
inflation or population growth, so we
Yes.
encountered that. 12 months ago, do you recall whether or not staff were spending a lot of time discussing the fentanyl crisis? Was it on the radar, or if it was on the radar, was it anticipated that it could be as significant as it's become?
Without a doubt, that amount of time and effort in the discussion that's taken place over the last year was not part of our discussion at this time last year, and certainly on our frontline workers and as you know, with our public safety, in particular firefighters, just the volume that we are seeing now is not anything that anyone would have forecasted or even talked about a year ago.
Right, but we have to balance, that's the law, so within the budget that we have, we try to make do. And face those challenges. Like the mayor, I appreciated the memo, but I think we'll have more time to discuss that later. I think where I'm coming from right now is that council should debate whether or not it's appropriate to add that 0.5 to the contingency reserve for the reasons that the city manager laid out. But I want to change the topic a little bit here to the question of policing, because we haven't heard much on that front. And I think it's part of all of the, we know that housing starts are maybe faster, and the affordability crisis much more sharp than the rate of inflation or the rate of growth in the economy. The fentanyl crisis is, an unacceptable humanitarian disaster, even though it was not anticipated a year ago. But I think in the policing situation, we see the police department coming in today with their budget letter, and as I read it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it's Deputy Chief Rye is saying, well, about 2.4% is what they're prepared to manage with as they recruit this year for a significant number of new people next year. So their number is kind of a stay-the-course number as they prepare to ramp up, we expect, in the coming year or two. If they were to stay to, say, 2.1% or the rate of inflation, where do they go to make a reduction? They make I see some of the answers there, but I wonder if you could summarize it for me.
And I don't know if the deputy chief is here. No, that's okay. So he's on his way, so we can ask maybe the next round of
maybe
questions
someone
as
else
well.
will
But
follow.
clearly, it's people in
wages.
in VPD, and it's wages.
It's wages.
And what we've seen over the last year is that the number of vacancies that the police has been higher than even than the target. So they've had more vacancies, therefore fewer people on, available to work, and that's also been reflected in higher overtime for those who are, because they're running a higher number of vacancies.
My last 5 seconds here. So just want to clarify this point. When we talk about the fentanyl crisis, we talk about an unanticipated requirement. We see in the front line firefighters and police officers whose wages are determined by arbitrators, not by this council, right? So those are costs we pay, period. Yeah. Okay, so thank you very much. That's all.
Thanks, Councillor Meigs. Councillor Louis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Probably most appropriate to, well, maybe I'll start with you, Mr. MP. Just on the line item on page 54 of your presentation, it talked about $675,000 towards permitting, I think that's what it was, for increased process. Can you just give me a breakdown a little bit of what that means? Like, what are you spending it on? Or Ms. Krishna has, or Mr. Kelly has more information, since they're both standing behind you.
That particular one on the 675 is for a review, a regulatory review, and that's going to be managed through the Planning, Urban Design, Sustainability Group. So I'll pass it over to Mr. Kelly.
I'd be interested in hearing a little bit more about that, given the complexities of the various streams and the anxiety, I think, that is quite high in a number of those different streams.
Sure. Gil Kelly, Planning, Urban Design, and Sustainability. Yeah, this is a program that's anticipated to begin in March once we're staffed up. This cost will be replicated in 2018 as well, so you'll see that same number. So it'll be an 18-month regulatory review project that will be an interdepartmental team that's staffed up to focus on essentially the complex web of regulations we have at the moment in the land use arena, and trying to eliminate sort of redundancy, duplication, confusion, and so forth. Kay Krishna and I have together hosted a series of meetings, as you know, with a development advisory group recently, and we're harvesting a lot of that information and prioritizing those requests in terms of the substance of what this regulatory review will undertake. And that will, by the way, I think range from very major questions like, should we do more area zoning as opposed to site rezonings and so forth, down to particular questions around heritage transfers and the function of the urban design panel and so forth and so on. So that's the venue in which we'd like to take on those questions and keep that conversation moving with both the development community and neighborhoods.
Okay. So, and you'll decide which one is more appropriate. Maybe just describe to me what has been happening in order to bring down some of the wait times. In the intervening time, we had some fairly robust activity for a period of time. We provided some extra resources. And describe what the effect has been over this past year.
Sure. Kay Krishna, Development, Buildings and Licensing. So we've made a lot of investments in the team. First, we have implemented and gone live with a fairly significant permits and licensing technology system, which has been rolled out over the past year. We've also added a few more staff, and in that we've seen a number of areas of progress. So as Ms. Impey said, we've seen the highest record of incoming applications for permits since 2014, which was the peak, highest ever. So the volumes continue to come in. We've seen some progress in some areas. So we've reduced the wait times for sort of the initial small homes development and reply back to developers. So we've reduced that time by half. We're on track with all of the large scale complex projects. Our targets are around 26 weeks, and we're around 30 weeks on average, but over 65% of those meet or are less than the target dates for turnaround for development permits. And we've also reduced some of the field reviews by half. So we're making progress in some areas. We know for the small homes development is still a problem area. We're going to continue to focus on that. That's a priority, in addition to looking at how we can expedite affordable housing overall. So those are kind of our two priorities going into 2017. One of the areas that we're looking at is the tree bylaw, which was implemented, as all of you know, this year. It's had a tremendous impact on outcomes. So the urban canopy, we've saved over 2,500 trees so far, but it's taken some time to implement that new program. And it's adding a little bit of delay to the small home. So we're looking at changing that process. We've added some staff that's already been accounted for in the budget. So that should speed things up. And we're also looking at ways to simplify and expedite outright small home development. So it's a real priority for us. We know it's still a problem area, and we'll be focusing on that in the coming year.
Okay, so a lot of these ideas and suggestions and activities that you're undertaking right now come as a result of some of the conversations that occurred at the Expert Advisory Committee, 4 meetings that have been undertaken. How many activities will there be, or is it waiting for the completion of that review that Mr. Kelly spoke of?
Great question. Thanks. So we had the committee. We've also had a lot of one-on-one meetings or other kind of stakeholder group meetings between the two of us as we've ramped up to really get a handle on what the kind of issues are with our stakeholders and in the community. And so we're taking all of that information, and Gil and I are working together to really look at our organizations, look at our processes, really launch this initiative into looking at the policies. And so we'll be coming back to council early next year, so the first quarter, with a recommendation that's much more detailed on our suggested additional policy changes that can be kind of near term, some programmatic and process changes, and potentially organizational as well. So there, you can stay tuned for much more detail, and we don't quite have the answers yet, but we'll come back to you in another month or two.
Mr. Kelly?
Yeah, I would just echo everything Kay said with one amendment, which is that I think there are some of those suggestions which can be implemented in advance of completing the regulatory review, which again will be about an 18-month process. I think there are some things you might characterize as low-hanging fruit that can be done quickly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Louis. Councillor Deal.
Yes, thank you very much, through the Mayor. Thank you for this very thorough presentation and your reports. It's lots of good evening reading there, maybe with some coffee. I wanted to focus in a little bit on the creative sector. Now, we've been discussing some real life issues here today, and they're very key of importance to all of us here in the city. And part of the budget highlights, talking about affordability, talking about vibrancy and livability, talking about financial health and a resilient city. Creativity is actually a key element in many of those things, and that's most obviously reflected in our culture budget and in our housing budget, because a lot of our creative sector are seeking out those affordable options as well. So perhaps just to focus in a little bit on the culture budget for a few minutes, and we might need Ms. Llewellyn-Thomas at the podium. There's a lot of moving pieces here. We have the operating grants, we have capital money, we have public art money, we have money through the park board, through the engineering department. I just would need a nice high-level review of where we've come in recent years and where we're going with the overall arc of our funding and facilities and public art through, well, we got the public art, but funding and facilities through the granting process and through our policy processes. So I think it's not quite as clear as it might be for some people.
I'll ask Ms. Llewellyn-Thomas to answer the question.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. It's better. So overall, you do find the cultural sector supported financially by the city in multiple places, and it will be rolled up in a more comprehensive way going forward. But essentially, cultural grants from the operating perspective have been increasing at a minimum of 2% per year. And since 2008, we've committed over $95 million to the cultural sector. In 2008, we also, Council responded to a request from the cultural sector through cultural services and established a capital grant for facilities. And through that, we've granted over $6.4 million in the last year. And this year's budget reflects the same trajectory of, recognizing inflation and maintaining the program. Overall, the cultural services operating budget is extremely small, $2.6 million for kind of the staff and services, and the bulk of it is that $11 million per year on grants.
Goes out the door.
That's right.
Right, and then we also have our grants for facilities, so theater use grants, and don't we have a new Creative Spark?
Yes, yeah, that's for emerging artists, and that's Council just received a report on it at their last meeting. We're doing a pilot right now. It's $200,000 over 4 years.
And all right, and that's in reflection to what we've heard from the arts sector, which is that they want to do more support for more diverse and individuals and emerging artists.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. So. In addition to those more obvious pieces, when it comes to facilities, what can we say in terms of the city's support of, be it theaters or studio space throughout the city? Has that been increasing in recent years?
Yes, it has, through a number of different means, through the direct grants that I spoke about, but we've also partnered creatively with BC Artscape, giving them $300,000 a year as a startup, and they're meant to be a self-sustaining, artist-driven entity that will support cultural facilities. There's also been Arts Factory at 281 Industrial, so a number, the Vivo Media Arts Center, number of examples like that where the city has stepped in to use its own properties and its own resources to facilitate that.
Thank you. Now we have another new opportunity coming up in the near future, right? We have a new managing director who will be hired shortly. Is that correct?
That search is underway right now, and the whole city is depending on that position to review what we've been doing and see, listen to the cultural sector and see if there are improvements that we can make over and above what we're doing.
Right, and there's a key gaps assessment underway right now?
Yeah, I like to think of it as like an infrastructure strategy. We've looked at key gaps in the performing arts spaces, and we're looking at other key gaps. And when the new managing director is here, they'll be able to kind of inform that with a broad vision as well.
Right, because I know we're getting some letters asking for an increase in the culture budget, and I'm hoping that this new managing director will work on a new cultural strategy which has those targets and goals, targets, metrics, so that we actually know what we're pointing at when we look at these kinds of increases. Is that something we're looking at for part of the new work plan?
That will be job number one.
Okay, thanks. And I also wanted to mention, I see Doug Smith upstairs, that the sustainability department has embedded an artist, and I think that's one of the creative approaches to creativity that we're taking in the city.
Yeah. If I could also add for council's benefit that in parks and engineering over the last 5 years, over $12.1 million has been granted to the creative sector.
In addition to what we see in the obvious spreadsheets.
That's correct.
Well, thank you very much for that.
Thanks, Councillor Deal. Councillor Carr is next.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Very much appreciate all the work that has gone into the presentations and the preparation of this budget. I'd like to start by asking about something that already has been brought up, but it is the fentanyl crisis and what we need to do as a city council in terms of meeting the new demands that has put on us. Thank you for the memo. I appreciate that the memo that you just sent, but I noticed that most of the additional actions are talking about frontline staff, community policing center, mental health support, some extra support for staff at shelters, etc. But there is nothing in here that points to our firefighters who are really at the front line in terms of the emergency response to the situation there. So may I ask first a question about the, this is on page 3 of your memo, Ms. Impey, additional Vancouver Fire and Rescue Services medic unit, a 3-person crew to support the downtown east side. Is that a new medic unit or is that a diversion or a deployment from some other fire hall?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the in that section of the report, that's additional resources.
Okay.
And again, the level of which would be determined by the fire chief based on the experiences at hand, but it gives council an estimate of what that cost would be. It's in the area of 1.8 million to do a fully staffed 24/7.
Right. And so if that's additional, is that built into our budget, or would all of these things amount to the need for us to increase property tax, for example, as you suggested here, by 0.5%, which would give us an additional
3.5 million.
3.5 million plus the 4 million that's already in contingency.
Yeah, in the memo, the section number 2 just summarizes the items that are in the budget, and those are the ones that I spoke about today.
Right.
A high focus on the downtown east side, et cetera, et cetera. And then section 3 are potential additional ones, so those are not in the budget. And those would be, and again, it's sort of a number of options. I think each of those need to be investigated and understood on the impact, et cetera. But for where we sit now, looking out into the next year, these are the kinds of things that I think the organization feels could come forward as the needs arise and as they have time to understand sort of the best impact and outcome.
Yeah.
And those would be in addition to the budget that's been proposed, yes.
Right, okay. And so that proposal could come forward from us when we debate the motions related to this budget next week.
Yes.
Right, okay. Perhaps you can give us an indication then of how that, if we wanted to do anything in addition to that, or provide additional direction. For example, I mean, my worry is that we have firefighters who are meeting the demand of 30 calls a shift, and in some cases, and the strain is unbelievable. So, the additional firefighters themselves, which is not mentioned here, I'd like to make sure that is part of it, other than the 3-person medic team.
Right. Yes. And I think my recommendation would be for, maybe a direction to the fire chief to come back and, it's in his purview versus mine as far as indicating what would be the best use and best activity and what funds are needed for that activity.
Would the best way to approach that be to, I have way more questions than I can ask right now. So to provide questions that staff can come back with for next week?
Yes, please feel free to do that. And when we come back, and I can provide you with a summary of the responses to all of council.
Great, perfect. I also very much appreciate that we got a letter from the general manager of the park board, and that included a request from the park board, which was a unanimous decision at the park board, for an additional 1.2 million to complete all 5 of their washroom projects. Now, how would we handle that in the budget? Is there another contingency for washrooms?
So our process around capital is we do come back to council every quarter with changes, because the nature of capital is that projects change and sometimes priorities change. And so each quarter we come back with potential adjustments to the budget that council votes on. I guess my recommendation would be if you direct us to look at that as far as our next update to council, and then that would give staff enough time to look at. Again, we'd like to make sure when we have a project, they've got a proper project scope. We understand the outcomes, that we've identified the proper funding source, because not all projects have a similar funding source. So that would be sort of our recommendation, that we take back and do that proper work to come forward with a project scope, et cetera. And that just gets included in our quarterly update. So that is one process that we could follow.
Great, thank you for the advice. Another time.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Carr. Councillor DiGenova.
Thank you very much. I, like Councillor Carr, have a number of questions, so I will have to send some
Email
to staff.
you, yeah.
I'll try and get through them. And I think the most pressing, because it came to us so recently, was regarding the fentanyl crisis and looking at increasing taxes yet again. So when we're doing that, the first question that I have is, have the BC ambulance paramedics been consulted on this with city staff and the BC ambulance service? So that would be both QP 873 as well as the BC ambulance service.
So I'll ask our fire chief to respond to that.
My apologies. Could you repeat the question?
I was wondering regarding this, and I understand that all of council received a memo. I didn't see anything about consultation with the BC ambulance paramedics or the BC ambulance service. So I was hoping you would be able to elaborate on how recently that consultation has happened, if it has happened at all.
Thank you. Yes, we're in consultation with their senior staff on the issues, predominantly in the downtown east side right now on the fentanyl crisis. And it's also through the deputy city manager, and the city manager has arranged now weekly conference calls with representatives of both that agency and the Vancouver Coastal Health. So we're being as inclusive as possible, and I turn it over to the city manager to elaborate if necessary.
If I could just jump in. The memo that we produced was at the request of council at council last week. And so what we've tried to do is to take in the lessons that we've been learning over the last month as this crisis has escalated. And we've mapped out in the memo some potential investments that could be made to address the pressures that we're seeing. As we indicate in the memo, our recommendation would be that any allocation of those funds would come back to council in a specific and discrete proposal which council would approve. So the concept of an additional medic crew, that is something we would want to go back, engage further with our fire staff, engage further with ambulance, work with that community, come back with a concept. So this really is a menu of opportunities. We would want to flesh them out and come back and have council approve each of those as discrete investments. And so many of these aren't fully fleshed out in the way that we would expect when we bring them forward with the details.
Thank you. And a follow-up question to that would be regarding, I understand that there was a report that was issued. It was either by the government or BC Ambulance Service themselves, saying that Vancouver is short 25 ambulances and 16 on any given day. I'm wondering if we're allocating resources for the fentanyl crisis, would resources be put towards that? I understand it's provincial, but I also understand that this is a provincial issue as well.
I'm not, all I can say is in my limited discussions with the BC Emergency Health Services is that they're having challenges with both the crisis in the fentanyl crisis, and let's not forget there is a medical increase requirement about 9% per year. So this is capped on top of that, and so that is a staffing issue that they're dealing with as well.
Another question is regarding, and perhaps this would best be answered by Ms. Impey. I'll let you make that decision. But regarding why the recommendation would be to increase property taxes 0.5%. Instead of looking within our budget areas such as, we have buzzwords, innovation funds, we have economic commissions. I'm looking at this budget and I don't see the line items there, but large pockets of money. And perhaps we need to, if we are in such a crisis and we're not asking the province to step up, as I'm surprised because we asked the province to step up on everything else, why aren't we looking within our budget instead of putting that burden on the taxpayer?
Councillor, I think in going through the budget is a balancing, definitely a balance of financial impact as well as what we're trying to achieve in responding to the current issues. I think through the exercise that we've gone through with the budget is we really felt that this year an additional property tax was warranted in order to achieve all of the activities that we have in addressing those issues. So. Certainly, there's a list of investments that we proposed, and that's the priority for our staff right now.
Thank you. I'll try and get my last two questions in really quickly. I'm just wondering regarding empty homes, short-term rental, and I suppose also fines for cannabis dispensaries. I'm just wondering how many enforcement officers will be added, as well as if you could please elaborate on the how we've fast-tracked permits for development. I understand that the rezoning fees went up 30% last year for developments and 10% for single-family homeowners. Sorry, all of those questions at once, but most fall under planning development.
The first one is on the empty homes. That will not be implemented until 2018 as far as the actual taxes being paid and any audit follow-up, etc. So there's no money in this budget for that enforcement, and I'll pass it over to Ms. Krishna for your other question.
Sure, thanks. So Empty Homes is a tax program, and so it doesn't use the enforcement staff in the same way, and that will be tracked and audited through tax programs. The short-term rentals and other enforcement activities, including medical marijuana, which we anticipate could change under a new federal regime, so we're still to be determined. We're holding steady with our current headcount for this next year, but with the understanding that we're coming back, as I've shared with Council on previous dates, that we are going to do a full review of our enforcement tools and programs, and hopefully we'll come back to you in the new year with some proposals if we anticipate a new need. And that would include medical marijuana dispensaries, as well as proactive preservation for problem premises and SROs, among other things. And so at this time, we're holding steady. And we're also looking at ways that we can prioritize the staff that we have on some of the really key issues that we're facing.
Okay, next up.
Sorry, the second question around permits. I'm not sure exactly what the question was. I'm sorry. It was about the increase in fees, but also the actual expediting permit times. And so I think that similar to my answer to Councillor Louie, we have spent a considerable amount of time investing in expediting different types of permits over this past year. We've made a number of progress steps in certain areas, but there's more work to be done. And so part of what Mr. Kelly and I will be focusing on and really prioritizing our time on in the first part of next year is what are other opportunities? How can we expedite? We're focusing first and foremost on affordable housing, as I mentioned, which was a motion passed by Council a few weeks ago, in addition to looking at small homes, which have been kind of a continuing problem area for us that we hope to speed up, particularly around outright developments. So more on that in the coming months.
Okay, next up, Councillor Affleck.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll start with housing. I was surprised on page 280 of the report, the data, which was helpful to see the last 5 years. It took us up to 2016, where we have the number of supportive housing units committed starting in 2012, 104, 2013, 52, 2014, 0, 2015, 0, 2016, 0. Number of social housing units committed, 2012, 468, 2013, 273, 2014, 630, and 71 in 2015, and 233 in 2016. And then supportive housing units committed 318 in 2012, all the way down to 28 in 2016. And then looking at the direct City of Vancouver operations, number of units from 2012 to 2016, we went from 851, and then we stuck at 851. In your report, you talked about all this stuff that's coming forward. It's not identified in this graph what 17, 18. Obviously, a budget's about looking forward. This is looking in the past. What is interesting is the number of secured market rental units, which has averaged around 1,000, 1,100 units per year. These are not truly affordable housing, as I always like to state. These are market rental units. And laneway houses seem to be very popular as well, not truly affordable, then within the 30% of your income range. Can you, in this graph form, project in a simple way for us what we'll see 2017, 2018 of truly affordable housing, not to mention the number of units the city operates? Will we see that number escalate in any capacity or perhaps de-escalate? I mean, if we're having to do renovations, I think these numbers, given that the city's priority, is, as long as certainly Vision's been in power, has been to build housing in the city and affordable housing, but the opposite seems to be the case in your report. From the data that we have in the past, we seem to be going backwards. And I'm wondering if you can provide me with a straightforward answer that shows me optimistically and certainly that those numbers will change. It's positive.
Kathleen Llewellyn-Thomas, General Manager of Community Services. The short answer is I don't have a graph that projects it. In my remarks, I actually was thinking of saying that an area that troubles us is that the affordability is an issue. But to take the larger view, we were producing almost no purpose-built rental in previous years. And because of the programs that have been put in the last 8 years, we're starting to get markets. So that we did have targets for secured market rental, and we've exceeded those.
Yeah, I don't want to get into that argument about what is, because we were building it through strata rental, and we still do, 1,500 units per year of market rental. There was no, I know that there's this whole argument. I don't want to get into that argument. I'm just wondering why we didn't project. You talked about it in a general sense. It kind of alludes to some numbers in the report, but it's not in the graph. And in a budget, I'm trying to make a decision on how we're spending. And a big part of this budget, a big chunk of it, is towards housing. But yet you have a graph that doesn't project what success can we expect. And the fact that we haven't got that in the graph, that means to me, you can't project it. You're not able to because, as you said in your report, you're waiting for other levels of government, private sector, public sector. Like, is there no way to provide us with some sort of continuity here of projecting the future on housing, the number one priority of the city, as far as I understand?
So this goes back to the way that affordable housing has been funded to date. The province has been funding supported housing programs. So through the land that we contributed to the supported housing program, you see those units now completing, and the social housing projects that you see are being developed are mainly through the CAC program. So developers are building those units, and those are being approved by council on rezonings, and those are now starting to ramp up as those units start to build out and complete.
Why were they not put in the graph? Why didn't you put those numbers in for 2017, which is that's what this budget's for, correct?
Right. It does show in the 2017 that there will be some projects coming forward in terms of the completions. I think there's about 200 completions coming forward next year, but this is dependent on when developers build out the social housing. What we're doing through the housing agency is having more control over that process, and we have 2,500 units being built over the next 5 years through the capital plan and the relationships that we're building with partners. But we can map out that for you if that's something that you want to see.
Okay, I'm already out of time. One question in, and I'm out of time, but thanks.
Okay, Councillor Stevenson is next.
Thanks very much. Just a quick note on the fentanyl crisis. I was coming to work this morning and listening to CKNW, and the firefighters, two representatives of the firefighters union, were speaking on NW about this memo and so on. And I have to say they were very, very positive. I was really pleased to hear their remarks, and they were positive and quite keen because, of course, they're the ones that are on the front lines having to deal with this crisis. So I think I think the negotiations will be really not just respectful, but very helpful. So I wanted just to touch a bit more on housing. I was very pleased to see that Councillor Affleck is so progressive and keen on affordable housing. But I know that we have about $80 million going into affordable housing in the budget. And just to make sure that everyone is aware of where that money is going, I wanted to talk about that and how that differentiates with supportive housing and how those two link together, because so many people have a misapprehension under what affordable housing is and what supportive housing is and what we're doing on both. And then I wanted to touch a bit on the SROs and the amount of money that's going in there and what exactly is being done and how that links to the province. So that's the areas I wanted to talk about.
Maybe I'll invite Mr. Latif and Ms. Llewellyn-Thomas up. They're best to answer your questions.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. Mukhtar Latif, Chief Housing Officer. The difference between supportive housing and social or affordable housing is that in terms of supported housing, they tend to have buildings that are programmed to support people with health and mental health addictions. And they have specialist teams and management that manage those buildings in terms of providing those additional supports within that building for that client group. And as I mentioned earlier, the city has contributed a substantial amount of equity through its land contributions to enable the first 1,500 units to be built, obviously with support from BC Housing and non-profits to develop those projects. The affordable housing, social housing programs ended about 25 years ago. This is the co-op non-profit housing programs, and there hasn't really been big investments in those projects. And what council committed to through the housing agency is to create that new supply using its land assets, and then obviously looking to work with partners to create 2,500 units. That was really an initial start in the absence of provincial and federal government funding 2 years ago. We're now seeing that provincial federal government coming forward, which hopefully means that we can layer in additional affordability in terms of the projects that we got currently going through the pipeline. As we move forward, what we're also seeing is that the council approved projects for rezoning through the community amenity contributions have been approved and ramping up. And as those projects, we have 1,000 of those units under construction that will be starting to be delivered over the coming years. And again, those have been projects that will be for affordable social housing, income or rents that will range from income assistance right up to low end of market.
Well, that's, I mean, this is a substantial amount of money that we're committing. And even though, as we know, housing is supposedly a provincial jurisdiction, but this council has really, I think, risen to the challenge. What about the SROs, and where exactly is that money going, and how are we cooperating with the province on that particular issue?
If I can pass on to my colleague, Kathleen.
Kathleen Llewellyn-Thomas. We've actually reestablished the SRO task force. So we're working with all the stakeholders involved, tenants, SRO owners, nonprofits, and other agencies. And Ms. Krishna and I are co-chairing a committee to see how we can target our resources, whether it's planning approvals, our processes, or whether it's money. In this year's budget, we do have $3 million allocated for partnering for SRO upgrades, and we continue to partner with the province of BC in their upgrades to SROs.
And again, that's a substantial amount of money, certainly over what's been done years previously. And hopefully we'll build on that in the future, because there's such a need in the downtown east side particularly.
Exactly, and for a vulnerable population.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Stevenson. So that's the end of our speakers list with questions. As I understand it, Councillor Reimer, I think you got something separate. You don't have questions. So a big thanks to staff for all the presentations and all your answers to our questions and all the work on the budget so far. We're going to go to our speakers list, and I just want to raise that I had communications from our Park Board Chair, Sarah Kirby-Young, that she wished to speak to Council but had not signed up. So I think in this case, to make an exception like this, it would be appropriate for council to have a motion and vote on that. I think that Councillor Reimer, that's what you're on the queue for.
Thanks, Mayor Robertson. I'm happy to support a motion to suspend the rules, but I did want to say that I, with the greatest of respects to all of the people who did sign up on time, I appreciate you following the rules. It is important that we hear from our park board chair, though, so I do. If this is the only avenue available to us to do that, then I hope council will support suspending the rules to do so.
Okay, and I think it's appropriate as a public body or of the city, we can put Ms. Kirby-Young at number 8 on the speakers list as in the public body list. So Councillor Reimer, you move that. The seconder, Councillor Louis, any more debate on that? All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries unanimously. So she will be speaker number 8 on the public body and union representative list. And we have at this point 15 people after that who are registered to speak as well. So we'll go to our first speaker, starting with the public body and union representative list, and that's Mary Lynn Baum, who is the chair of the Vancouver Public Library Board. Welcome, Ms. Baum, back to council.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, city councilors. Good morning. My name is Mary Lynn Baum, and it's been my honor and privilege to again this year have served as the chair of the Vancouver Public Library Board. I have a couple of fellow trustees here in the audience, Rhonda Sherwood and Carolyn Brooks. I don't know if there are others upstairs, but very pleased that they could join us as well. It's my great pleasure to be here this morning to share the VPL Board's sincere appreciation for City Council's ongoing support for Vancouver Public Library, and in particular, the investments in VPL included in the proposed 2017 budget. This council knows well that the Vancouver Public Library is more than just books on shelves. Books are still very important to us, of course, but as a public library, VPL's core purpose is to ensure that every resident in Vancouver has opportunities to access, create, and share the knowledge, information, and culture that they and their communities need to thrive. Public libraries are most concerned with access and equity. Whatever the format, book, film, article, work of art, music, or musical instrument, and whatever the platform, live, analog, or digital, we are the equalizers in society, and we at VPL take this role very seriously. The proposed investments to VPL this year are critical and recognize the needs to ensure that the library can continue to respond to the public demand for digital and creative media access and training in the Inspiration Lab, to ensure that our highly used public spaces are welcoming and positive for everyone, and to ensure that our collections can remain strong in the face of the combined pressures of diversified publishing platforms, inflation, and U.S. exchange rates. The proposed funding also recognizes the need for annualized operational funding for the soon-to-be open not so much Strathcona branch, so that we can open this branch with the full range of services. We thank you for understanding the importance of all these. In the brief time remaining, I'd like to take just a minute to highlight some initiatives of the past year and the one to come. 2016 was an exciting year for VPL with the launch of the Sun Life Financial Musical Instrument Lending Library, the launch of several new digital collections such as Zenio, which includes over 200 magazines for downloading and streaming, and our streaming film collections such as the Criterion Collection, and also the launch of several new digital history projects that can remind us all of our history in order to help inform our future. 2017 looks to be just as exciting, and I look forward to introducing our new strategic plan to Council early in the new year, one that was developed with feedback from thousands of Vancouver residents. Also to opening the new Nutsimut Strathcona Branch Library, awaited for far too long, and to an exciting Canada 150 Plus contribution to the city's celebrations. In closing, let me once again thank you for your vision and support. We appreciate that this City Council recognizes how important access to learning is for well-being and the broad role that the public library plays in the community, far beyond the traditional notions of a library. And that is truly inspiring for those of us on the board and for our staff and our patrons. So again, thank you for Council's ongoing investments to ensure that we continue to provide the excellent public library services that are so valued and used by our citizens. Thanks.
Thank you very much for being here and all the good work that you and the library board do on behalf of the people of Vancouver. Thanks, Mary Lynn, and you've got questions from Councillor Carr first.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to be here today and for all the work that you do as a board, and for all the staff, of course. My question is really around the metrics that I've read in this report that are measurements of, I guess, success of the library. One could think of them that way. Although I'm looking for some greater explanation on your part, because some of the metrics, this is in Appendix D, page 52 and 53, show that there's some decreases in use, both of print materials, not of digital materials though, print materials and even programming. So I wonder if you could just explain that for me.
Certainly, I will do that, and then also in the absence of the chief librarian, who unfortunately or fortunately is at the Northern Exposure Leadership Institute, we have the Director of Corporate Services and the Director of Neighborhood Services here today. So I may defer to them for some answers. But certainly, as you say, there has been a decrease in some of our hard print materials. Thank you. I was searching for that. Somewhat to be expected with the ongoing shift to digital. There really has been an ongoing trade-off in that way. It is true that our branch traffic has decreased during the past year, but that's due to a couple of factors. One is that we permanently closed the Strathcona Branch Library in anticipation of the opening of the Nutsimut Strathcona Library, which had been anticipated for this fall, but unfortunately is not going to be happening until the new year. So we had 5 months of the year that we were missing an entire branch. Right. And that obviously had an impact. And as well, Carnegie was closed for over 2 weeks due to a flood and was only open for partial services for another week. But the other thing to keep in mind is that people have always used public libraries for different reasons. Some are what we would call our in and out patrons, who come in to collect books and then leave. They are using the library in a very limited way in terms of their presence actually in the library. Other people come in to attend programs, and other people come in to use the internet or our study spaces. So again, with the introduction of many more digital collections, we're seeing an increase in digital use. But if you come into the library, you will see that they are still extremely, they are actually crowded. they're usually packed with most of the seats taken. So the need for public space is still a pressing demand.
Well, the numbers are only marginally down, but
Yes.
I just was interested.
Yes.
And thank you for the explanation. That's really my only question. Well, other than to say that, do the metrics, do you think they might need to be changed, given the expansion of services that, there's a very different range of services, and I think community use within the library?
That is certainly the case, and it's something that the portion of our staff who look at those kinds of metrics are constantly updating and reevaluating. I don't know if I think I've answered it okay.
I'm almost out of time anyway, so thank you very much. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Ms. Baum, for coming once again this year. And I just want to start off by saying how much we appreciate the library board and all they do. Often they're unsung heroes working behind the scenes. You don't get to know them, but are extremely important to the running of the whole of the library system and put in many hours. And as the liaison, I'm very impressed when I'm at the meetings as to the depth of the discussion and the knowledge that people have. So please take that back to the board. I know I speak on behalf of the whole council.
Thank you, Councillor.
And also for your leadership as well, which has been amazing. And last year at this time, we had a discussion shortly after, and I said that I would get back to you this year regarding the budget, so that issues that might be outstanding could be included. And I did have a discussion with the chief librarian some time ago, and was told that the input that the board had was thoroughly incorporated in the budget and was appreciated, and had been working very closely with our city manager. So I just want to let the council know that that in fact has transpired, and that the chief librarian and the board is happy with the way this particular budget is going.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. I believe that my formal remarks expressed the depth of our appreciation, but also I would like to appreciate the opportunity to have been able to work in a collaborative way, both in speaking to individual councillors and at a staff level, to have had that kind of collaboration and rapport. I think it's been extremely beneficial. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
And finally, I just want to also appreciate and have you send back appreciation to the staff. The staff is marvelous there, both those who attend the board meetings and, of course, right on down through the whole library system. We're very, very fortunate here in Vancouver to have such a dedicated staff and such an excellent library system.
Absolutely. As an institution dedicated to public service, it's the people who are on the front lines who really make the difference to the lives of the people who are our patrons. So thank you for recognizing that.
And particularly with changing times with, say, the fentanyl crisis and other homeless crisis, which maybe 20 years ago people didn't have to deal with to the same extent. Those folks on the front line now really are on the front line dealing with these everyday issues that are removed, if you like, from library books and so on, but they still have to respond.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, that's all your questions. Thanks again for being here. And to the rest of the library board, thanks for the good work. And next speaker is Aliza Navari, who's here from QP 391 on behalf of our library workers. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that's good. My name is Aliza Navari. Obviously, thanks because you made that introduction and you pronounced my name correctly, so I'm very impressed. I am president of QP 391 and the elected representative of approximately 750 Vancouver Public Library workers. I want to thank Council for welcoming me to speak to you today about the proposed budget for 2017. I also want to say thank you to Mary Lynn, who I agreed with everything she said, especially about the staff, and for Adrian Carr's and Tim Stevenson's kind comments. I would also like to thank city staff for their work on this budget, in particular by recognizing the value of the Vancouver Public Library through a budget increase this year that will support and enable the organization to continue giving great public service and provide for diverse resources such as traditional and digital media, programming and learning, and the Inspiration Lab. Vancouver is a growing city, and the library is a critical resource for both new and established citizens alike. We are a significant and important component to the complement of city services. The greatest resource the Vancouver Public Library has to offer, however, is its staff, our members. They facilitate access to all the great things the library has to offer. They are the bridge to information and ideas. They bring children and caregivers together through story times. They help people connect to critical outside resources such as social services and help to close the digital divide, to name a few. Most importantly, our members build relationships with the community. They connect people together. They are the life of the library, and they are what makes it a vibrant, dynamic, and welcoming space for our diverse population. The proposed budget before you for consideration, if approved, would mean these people, our members, won't be negatively impacted by a need to absorb a budget shortfall. They can continue to engage with our public and rise to meet the demands of our growing city. I also want to say thank you and acknowledge the inclusion of funds that will ensure all our members earn a living wage. This is an important commitment from city staff and council that values the contributions of working people to the fabric of our city. I encourage council to support this proposed budget and hope for ongoing support in the coming years for the library, and in particular, its most important resource, our members. Putting money into libraries is an investment into the cultural, intellectual, and emotional health of our communities, and is a key factor in the realization of an engaged and resilient city. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for being here to speak, and thanks for all the good work.
You're very
library
welcome.
Workers.
Thank you, and you're very welcome.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Okay, we're on to our next speaker, another speaker on the library front. This is Judith Niemtan, who's president of the Friends of the Vancouver Public Library. Welcome.
Thank you, and you pronounced my name right too, so that's good. I was here last year, and I'm here again with thanks and congratulations. I represent the Friends of the VPL, which has a membership of over 500 and a volunteer force of about 100 volunteers. And because I told you all about us last year, I'm going to be very brief today. Just a very quick update is that we were very successful in our fundraising since I last reported, and we were able to increase our donation by 30% in 2016 to a total of $67,000. I know it's small potatoes, and we need all of the money and the increases that you're doing, but we are trying our best to raise things for some of the extras. That included $20,000 donation for the renovation of the upper floors, which I think will be a really great public space and cultural too. Our volunteers work hard to make this happen, and they're motivated by their appreciation of our library. And I, for one, am an avid reader, and I'm particularly pleased to see an increase in the collections budget awarded this year. Our annual Stay at Home and Read a Book Ball is on now. I brought some brochures in case you're interested. You can pick them up later from the clerk. And we have a number of fundraising activities, and we'll try and do what we did last year. We'll see what happens. But my main purpose here today is to thank City Council on behalf of the Friends of the VPL for your support for the library, which is such a well-used and necessary part of our community life. Our members, volunteers, and donors celebrate that we are fortunate to live in a city that understands the importance of our library and is prepared to enhance its budget to allow it to continue to strengthen and grow. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. You have questions from Councillor Stevenson.
Not a question, but just a thanks. I didn't include you before because I knew you were on the list to speak, but the work that you also do for the libraries is fantastic, and you have a really dedicated group of people who love the library. So Council thanks you as well.
It's our pleasure.
Thank you, and thanks again for all the hard work of your hundreds of members and volunteers and generous donations you guys have contributed. So on to speaker number 4, Donna Spencer, who's the chair of our Arts and Culture Policy Council. Welcome.
Good morning, Your Worship and members of Council. My name is Donna Spencer, and I've been charged with the wonderful responsibility of being the chair of the Arts and Culture Policy Council, one of the many committees that the city has. I want to just give you a quick update, Mr. Mayor. Sharman King will not be speaking today, so you can strike him off the list.
Okay, thank you.
All right. When I left the Fire Hall Arts Centre this morning, which is in the downtown east side, I talked to the homeless man that sleeps on the street, who sleeps on our front steps actually every night, and asked him if he wanted to come in and have some coffee. He said no, he was on his way to Carnegie to get warmed up and get something to eat. I also listened to the ambulance sirens going by, presumably our first responders going out to deal with another health crisis in the neighborhood. And I understand and certainly support and advocate for support for added services to deal with the fentanyl crisis. I see it every day. I know how important it is. And so when I step up to speak on behalf of the arts and culture sector, on behalf of the ACPC, and to advise City Council that there's a much needed increase for the cultural services budget, and in particular the operating grant program, I understand that your budgets are very tight. I get that. I work in the arts. So at this point, I want to say that we felt it was very important to speak because there isn't a managing director in the community services for cultural services right now to advocate for this very need. And also, I wanted to speak to thank you for everything that the City of Vancouver does for the arts. We know how much you care about the artistic and cultural community. We know how you advocate for it. We know how you look for additional funds for it. So thank you for that. But right now, balancing an arts budget is becoming more and more difficult in this city, not unlike the task that you were charged with today. There is never enough money. Our staff retention figures are really difficult because we can't afford to pay experienced staff what they can be paid in the commercial sector. Artists are leaving the city, artists are homeless in the city, and we want to bring forward to you that there is a need that the operating grants program be increased. Now, I have looked at the budget, and I look in the budget, and I do see that there has been an increase in the operating budget over the past 5 years. It is a 2% increase, and that is very, we applaud you for that, but there also has been an increase in the number of recipients that are accessing that program, and that increase is 25% approximately. So in actual fact, there has been a net loss to the operating grants budget if you perceive it from the perspective of how many more clients you have. We are in a place where this stagnant investment in the arts is having a truly negative effect on what we are able to do. Operating clients of the city are the drivers of arts and culture in this town. They are the stabilizers. They are the people that employ and support emerging and diverse artists. So we are not asking this in a manner that's not been thought out. We're used to balancing budgets, and our taxpayers are our artists, our audiences, and all our donors, and the City of Vancouver for a matter, because your response to what we do is very important to us. We have to respond and reflect what you want us to do, just as you have to respond as city councillors to what your taxpayers want. So what do we need it for? Well, we need it for staff and artistic salaries. They have been stagnant over the last 5 years. We need it for the fact that the cost of living has gone up incredibly, and that has impacted our production budgets, our marketing budgets, our administrative budgets. All of that money that the City of Vancouver invests in arts and culture, particularly in the operating program, goes right back into the city's economy. None of it goes to a shareholder. None of it goes out of the country, unless we've hired an out-of-country artist. But most of it goes right back into the local businesses and to paying taxes. Artists do pay taxes. They also pay city taxes, so we are also here as stakeholders. What else we need it for is, well, I wish we could say that we could actually pay artists a living wage. In many cases, we can't even pay them $15 an hour. So this is why this is an important project, an important investment that we're asking the city to make. The statistics show that if you invest in $1 in the arts, and this is a very mushy kind of statistic, but they say that if you invest $1 in the arts, you get between $3 and $5 back into the local economy. So I just leave you with that. My time is up. I'm just going to wrap it up here and say that without this investment, the city will never achieve what it aspires to achieve, which is to be a world-class city, a healthy city, a vibrant city, and one that everyone wants to visit. So please think about this seriously. We would like to recommend that this investment be in a sum total of 20% increase. Don't panic, we've thought it out. It would be 10% in the first year, which is actually, I think there's 2% allocated now, so that would be an additional 8%, and 5% the following 3 years. So that again would be an additional 3% from the 2 that you've already suggested. Thanks very much. There's lots of speakers coming through from the arts and culture sector, and have a very good day.
Thank you. You have questions. I'm going to suggest that we're just about to noon when we're scheduled to take a break. I'm going to suggest we quickly go through the questions. We've got 4 councillors on the queue, so we'll have questions to you, and then we will recess until 1 o'clock at that point and come back with speaker number 5. That's Rob Weeks and everyone on from there. So we'll go to Councillor Deal first. Questions?
Thanks very much, and thanks to Ms. Spencer for your dedication, both as a volunteer with the ACPC and for your work in the cultural sector for so many years. Thanks for coming forward and advocating. This is something that's really important for people to do. I'm curious, you did do a good job of talking about the percentages there at the end, because it's sort of a blanket ask, is it's sometimes difficult to address. As we get our new full-time managing director, and I wanted to mention, by the way, we have an acting managing director, which is Ms. Llewellyn Thomas, who's been doing an exceptional job in addition to all of her other portfolios, but I think she'll be as relieved as all of us to see a full-time person step back into that position. She's agreeing behind you. Anyway. As we move forward with the new managing director in place, we were speaking about this last night, identifying key gaps, developing a new cultural strategy that looks more like some of our other strategies, that has goals and targets, metrics, and then things that we can actually measure a budget against. Do you think that will make the job of advocating for increases easier?
Oh, of course it will. Actually, finding the information on where artistic investment and cultural investment is going in the city is quite difficult to do. And of course, I think the community would obviously want to work with this individual to do this. I think why we decided we felt it was important to speak was it will take some time for that individual to get up to speed. We're headed into a new budget year, and we all have budgets to balance. So that's why we felt it was important to come forward now.
Oh, that's good. Thank you very much. And just a follow-up question, in that one of the things that we're seeing right now is that there's a rapidly shifting needs. So that, for instance, you mentioned the fact that there are many new people getting grants. Those are often quite small entry-level grants. We've broadly increased the number of emerging individuals, small grantees, so they can get their foot in the door of being a grant recipient and then get matching funds. Is that...
I think that's very important, that we keep the sector vibrant. Although a $2,000 operating grant is really not going to do much to allow you to operate, because it won't trigger a huge investment from other funding bodies.
Which brings me to my third question. I'm hoping that you're advocating for big increases in the provincial government, because they are the reason that we're not doing well. We are at the top of the cities, and they are not anywhere near the top of the provinces.
Yeah, we certainly are indeed. And also, of course, Canada Council has just shown an made an amazing announcement to the budget for Canada Council. Right. Canada Council, the organization that funds arts all across Canada, has recognized the value of the arts in creating healthy cities, but also as well as the economic spin-off that happens
Absolutely.
from a vibrant arts and culture scene. So there's been a huge investment there. So we are hoping that we will move the province up because, yes, as we all know, it doesn't contribute as much as it should in many areas.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, questions, Councillor Meggs?
Yeah, thanks for coming. And I always regret having to have these conversations at the buzzer here.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, when did can you just tell me when the discussion began about a 20% lift? I think it would be, if it's just on the grants, that would be $2.5–3 million, right? Did you quantify it at all?
We didn't put a dollar figure on it because we were trying to actually determine what the grants budget was, and all I had was what was in the budget sheets. And the 10% increase was enough to get us, we saw the 10% this year would get us to the place that actually we would be most of the organizations would be in a more stable position. And then the additional amount was to actually help contribute to the new companies that are coming in, but also to help those companies that are in a position of being operating companies to respond to the changing demographic in the city as well. I mean, there's a whole shift happening. We have a lot of our original founders leaving our organizations, so there's that need for succession planning, but there's also a demographic shift in terms of cultural, where we need to invest our money in cultural monies, I think.
Yeah, and I guess I have a whole host of questions, and there's not time for them today, but do you have a sense of any kind of quantitative answer to Councillor Deal's question? Like, if the province was performing at the level of, say, Quebec or the province of Ontario, how much more would be available to city arts infrastructure?
Well, I think what's being advocated at this point at the province, and I don't have that answer for you, but I'll say what's being advocated is for at least a third increase in what the existing budget is.
It should be how much?
What is the budget?
Is it a dollar number? Yeah, and so we're at 11 and the whole province is 23.
Well, and I think the other thing that I would say, Councillor Meggs, is if there's a way to advocate for Metro Vancouver to pick up some of the responsibility for the fact that the majority of the cultural generators are in Vancouver, and I know you know this. So Vancouver is delivering a lot of value to the surrounding communities.
I think Acting Mayor Louie is the best place to deal with that, and I'm sure he'll knock it out of the park. Just one last one, though, is what process do you propose or would you recommend to get to the bottom of this? Because as I say, it's difficult here when we're discussing the fentanyl crisis to come into this arts conversation and hear about this wide range of needs. And in a situation, too, where I think the city is wrestling with supporting the management of arts organizations, which vary in their capacity. Okay, well, some go bankrupt and some don't.
Right.
And so what we're doing is working with arts organizations to try to increase their capacity to manage well at the same time that we're asked for grants. So what process would you recommend a new manager undertake to bring forward a much more fleshed out recommendation to meet the needs of the arts community?
To get to the bottom of what the true need is, I would suppose that the best way to do this, and I don't know how to, I wouldn't want to tell someone how to do their job, but I think there needs to be an extensive review process to look at the value of what the operating clients are actually giving to the city, what they actually need to be able to give more or to support and develop more funding resources. So I think there, personally, I think there needs to be a bit of strategic planning with those organizations.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think the new cultural strategy is a very important part of that. We could sit back and wait. We thought about whether we should sit back and wait before making this request, and frankly, we went, no, we're at the stage where we actually need investment or we're going to lose even more people before this comes around next year. And then the city will, again, be impacted on that.
Okay, thanks. That's all I have.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Meggs. Councillor Affleck.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just so to be clear, you're asking how much, an increase of how much in Vancouver?
We're asking for a 10% increase, which actually is an 8% increase because I believe there was a 2%.
A little less than $1 million on the budget. Yeah. So the $23 million that you provincially, that's the overall budget or the ask? I was a bit confused.
So the $23 million.
Is that the entire arts budget or?
It's the BC Arts Council piece.
Okay, so it's one
So
piece
it's not
of
the
that, not the
creative
whole.
sector. No.
No, okay.
Not,
That
no,
was
it's not
a bit,
all the
wanna make sure
library
that-
investment and all of that kind of stuff.
Okay, so we
Libraries
probably.
is not funded through BC Arts Council.
Right, so that number would be helpful to ask. I mean, you hear in this chamber finger pointing a lot and saying the province isn't stepping up, you know, we are, but it's interesting because there's a lot of talk in this chamber about arts being a priority, but you're basically, and then we funded them so much, but I'm looking at the data and I'm listening to you, and in effect, it's been a decrease over the last several years because of the portion you're saying is more people getting a smaller piece of the pie. The pie's gone up a little bit, but there's more people involved, so in effect, it's a negative to a lot of groups.
Yeah, that's the analysis of the data that I had in front of me. But frankly, there may be more data that I would have to look at, Councillor Affleck. But yes, that is what I'm saying, is that there is an actual decrease in what operating funds are being given, or a freeze for most organizations.
Right, so that's troubling. I've been on boards of arts groups before I got into politics, and I know how every penny makes a big difference. One area that we do have control over and is our facilities that we rent out, especially the theaters. From what I understand, there's been an increase in prices. With the way the theaters works, from what I understand, is that that you get a rental rate, but that's considered a grant, or there's a quid pro quo, or it's considered part of the grant program. And if we raise the rents, then it looks like your grant is going up. Is that how I understand it?
Well, yes, I would say that would be how it goes. ACPC is, we have a rep who is from the Civic Theatres on the Arts and Culture Policy Council. I'm not the expert on the Civic Theatre portfolio, but yes, if you get a rent grant from the city,
you pay it back to the city to get your space.
Yes, it goes back to pay for your use of the space.
So it's really not a grant at all. It's just a free rent for a space potentially, but we keep raising the price of this facilities, do we not?
I don't think I'm the expert on that, but yes, I believe they do. I really can't.
And do we know if the grants are matching the rent increase?
If you get a rental grant, it covers your rent.
So
and in some cases, there might be some subsidization of front of house and technical support.
So the numbers that we have here, this increase that you're talking about, could also include potentially money that we're giving, and then taking back. So in effect, we're not really getting anywhere for you or for us.
Well, no, the funds to operating clients, that is cash dollar. That's dollars going to an organization to invest in what they do.
Okay, so that's specifically what you're talking about.
That's specifically what I'm talking about.
Rental stuff is separate.
The rental stuff is separate, yes.
Just wanted to make sure that.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Okay, next and final questions from Councillor Reimer.
Thanks for coming, Ms. Spencer. We aren't voting today, which is good, because it sounds like we have a week to try and sort out these numbers. I don't need them right now, and it sounds like you don't have them in front of you in any event. But it'd be helpful to get a memo. I didn't see the Alliance signed up to speak, but perhaps we could get a memo from you that explains the discrepancy between the 16% increase we've seen over the last 8 years and the 20% increase in demand, and where that's coming from, so that we could try and reconcile those numbers and see. It's a lot of numbers flying around, and I'm trying to understand how they all fit together. Yeah, it's not a public hearing, so we can talk offline and try and sort out where the gap is here.
So just so I understand what you're looking for, you're looking specifically for what the need is.
I'm trying to understand, we have been increasing, this is 16% increase.
Why there's the falling behind.
Yeah, because Councillor Affleck has said it's not because of provincial underfunding, which I'm willing to accept with some numbers on paper, but I'm trying to understand why if we're increasing the funding and the need is going up, where that need is coming from and how we would meet it if it's not as a result of provincial underfunding.
Well, just very quickly, the 2% increase basically would go towards a cost of living increase.
Right.
If there were no clients being added to the program, then it would not be affected quite so much. But since there was a 25% increase in the number of clients that are getting operating grants in that time period, that affects that 2%. So you end up with, you have a 10% increase and a 25% increase, and you do the math, and it's a 15%.
That I hear. What I didn't understand, because you told Councillor Affleck it wasn't as a result of provincial underfunding, where do these 25% new clients come from? Like, why do they need money now in ways that they didn't need 9 years ago?
Because the cost of living has increased incredibly.
Okay, that's what I'm unclear on. We have
Yeah.
an increase in the cost of living, and we all agree on that.
Yeah, sorry.
You're telling us there's so that would be fine, except there's also 25% new groups applying.
That's right.
So where do those 25% come from?
They come from some of the project grants, I imagine. I would have to go and review. I really don't know.
That's what I'm really interested in.
Because it's not stated in the budget document, and we don't always see all of that information at ACPC. So we can find that out for you for sure.
Okay.
And I'm just clarifying the comment that I might have made to Councillor Affleck. I don't think I would have said that it wasn't because of the BC Arts Council not investing money.
Okay, he took it as that.
Yeah.
So he's not here to clarify that.
Oh, I think he was basically trying, well, I don't know. I can't interpret for him.
Yeah.
There I go. That's the director in me trying to figure out.
Okay, yeah, no, fair enough. It's to try, if we are keeping up with cost of living increases in some respect, where this new demand is coming from, to help us understand how we might, if it is offloading, I'm not sure that's sustainable for us to take that on over the long term, but if it's not, it's good to know what it really is.
I think it shows that the city is a very vibrant and important cultural center. So there are more arts groups happening. I think there's been I think there has been a will at the city cultural services to actually expand the clients that they can serve, so that we do have a reflection of what the city is in our arts organizations that are being funded. So I think that's where some of that 25% increase is coming from. New groups that have actually established, or older groups that have actually come to a place where they are now an operating client.
Okay, any information you could provide to help flesh that out would be useful. Okay.
Forward to it. Thank you very much, and thanks for your support of the arts.
Likewise, thank you very much for all your work on the Arts Council here, and the whole team of Arts Council. Thanks for all your ongoing work and advocacy. That is all we're going to do for this morning. So we are going to recess this special council meeting and come back at 1 o'clock to hear from the balance of our speakers, starting with speaker number 5, Rob Weeks, and continuing on from there. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you at 1 o'clock.